This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and today is my special guest here. We have two-time UFC tournament winner, former Vale Tudo champion of the world, former Pride fighter, star of The Smashing Machine, and supposedly star of a new movie where The Rock is actually going to play him. Mark Kerr, The Smashing Machine himself. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. I definitely appreciate you having me on, and I know it's taken a little bit of coordination to get us together on but I'm glad that we're here, man. I think I'll enjoy this.
You're still keeping yourself pretty busy these days. What are you doing these days?
Yeah, you know what? I got into right now. I'm trying to. It's more of a volunteer work. An older gentleman approached me to try to help out a Vietnam veteran friend of his, and we just got Martha McSally's office involved in it. She's a local senator here, and we're trying to come up. She just got some legislation passed, and she's got her plate full because she's got re-election and stuff, but we're trying to get some stuff loaded up with her to start a Senate inquiry into some of the veteran issues that exist in Arizona. And we've helped actually rescue a couple different veterans. It sounds kind of weird to even say rescue, but we basically had helped a Vietnam veteran that was put to a facility that it just didn't belong in the facility. And once he gets in a situation like that, it's very hard to get him out of it. And so that's what's been occupying a lot of my time over the last couple of months here. But I'm getting ready to, as COVID starts to break loose, I'm going to get ready to go back to work and, get back to the gym and do the things, do some additional things, I should say.
Now, I know you had an extremely successful amateur wrestling career. How did you end up getting into MMA?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I moved out here in 1995, out here, Arizona, and the Sunkist kids were putting together a training camp leading up to the '96 Olympics. And so a lot of people from a lot of parts of the country came out here to train. And it was, oh gosh, man, it was me. It was all the locals, so like a guy named Melvin Douglas, Townsend Saunders. It was also going to be Kenny Monday. There's a lot of really good USA wrestling guys that were out here. Zeke Jones, who's now the coach at ASU. And so I came out here, and it just so happens that the facility that we were practicing in also had a dojo. And there was a gentleman there named Richard Hamilton. And Richard Hamilton kept trying to say to us, hey, listen, if you don't make the Olympic team, I think that I can get you into this fighting stuff, this UFC stuff. And that's how it just started. And of that group, Dan Severn came out one time, and we talked to him, hey, how legit is this? And, stuff like that. And, since he was the first wrestler that was really in it and successful with it, we kind of said, okay, if Dan says it's okay, it's good. And then Mark Coleman ended up getting in it. And then when Mark went in it and I saw him do it, we're like, holy crap. Mark goes, dude, you got to do it. And that was the first Vale Tudo that I did in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And that was January 1997. And then from there, the rest of it kind of just fell out in front of me.
And there's a fan on here, John, that tipped you $5 and said, thanks for helping out us veterans. Having you guys care means a lot.
Oh man, it's the least I can do. The senator just passed. If you get an opportunity to look at what Martha McSally just passed, she just passed legislation here in Arizona. And I don't know if you're in Arizona or not, but she has $11 million that's set aside to work on veteran homelessness. And it just shouldn't exist. There isn't anybody that served in the military or in war or anything like that should be homeless. It should just be a rite of passage. You go to war, you're in the military, you got a house. It's not that big a deal. we're a pretty affluent country, and I think it's the least that we could do. So she set aside $11 million and some other stuff. So, it's the least I can do, man. I appreciate that, John.
And you mentioned Dan Severn and Mark Coleman. Were those a couple of the fighters that you looked up to getting into MMA?
Mark was 4 years older than me, and I think Dan's a little bit older than that. Mark, I ran into Mark when I wrestled. So I had an opportunity to compete against him, and I was a lot younger than he was. Both times I competed against him, he beat me. And then I did training camp leading up to the 1992 Olympics with Coleman, and that was kind of interesting because him and I were roommates, and it was interesting to say the least. But Mark is actually a really good guy, and I've been friends with him for a lot of years. So I looked up to him for a lot of different reasons. Not gifted with the most talent, but gifted with probably one of the hardest work ethics of anybody that I've ever seen. He just made up for where he lacked in talent through hard work.
How was Mark to spar with when you guys were training for fights?
Dude, he's a stump. He's hard to move. Like I've had opportunities to train with Brock Lesnar too, and Brock is like Mark plus 1.5. There's pictures of Brock when he's like 6'3", and he's, I'm going to say probably I've seen him 285 pounds with probably 7% body fat, for a big dude. That's just unheard of, and Brock is just a stump too. Him and Mark are just typical Midwest wrestlers, just great at fundamentals, hard to move him off position, and just really difficult to train with sometimes.
Did Brock bring you in to work with him during one of his training camps?
He, Brock was smart when he first got into MMA. Originally, when he was trying out for the Minnesota Vikings, and he was here, they had a facility that was really geared towards getting professional athletes either back on the field or getting them ready for like combines and stuff like that. And Brock had come out here when he ended his contract with the WWE, and he trained. And I just happened to run into him at a local MMA event that was here in Phoenix. And so we talked for a few, and I said, hey, listen, Brock, if you're ever interested in getting MMA, give me a call. At least I can point you in the right direction. And some time went by, and I got contacted by an attorney out of Minneapolis, and the attorney said, hey, Brock would like to talk to you. He put us together. Brock came down here. He trained with me for a little bit, and then we went down and trained with Don Frye for a little bit, just so Don Frye and myself could evaluate Brock to say, hey, dude, you're, physically you have the gifts, you have all the other skills that are required, because one thing MMA has shown is that you could be a big dude. It doesn't mean you can fight, So Brock came down here, we talked a little bit, and then he had me up to Minnesota for a little bit to help him set up his training facility. I would try to get at least enough people around him and to spar with him a little bit. I was well past my prime to be able to spar with him like he needed. And it was interesting. I spent probably almost a month up in Minnesota with him.
Wow. Do you think you would have done all right against him in an actual professional fight if you guys had been matched up together?
Yeah, any of the wrestlers I think that I would do well against. It's just one of those things where it's like, I think like if Mark Coleman and I were matched up, or me and Brock Lesnar, or Brock Lesnar or Mark Coleman, I think for a lot of wrestlers, when you're at that level, that I think you could just flip a coin some days to see who's going to win. It's just, I think it would be that close. Because I know with Brock, there'd be a lot of wrestling, a lot of grinding. He's just a big, massive human being, and so, if you're not in great condition, he could wear you out in half a round, just how big and dominant he is physically. Mark, same way. Mark Coleman was a grinder. just a grinder, get on top of you and grind you into the ground. So any of those guys, I know that I'm just as good a wrestler, if not a better wrestler in some aspects. So flip a coin. I think that's the way most of that would be with either Brock, myself, or Coleman.
Did you happen to catch the heavyweight fight last night with Stipe?
I read some of it. I missed it last night. So obviously you watched it.
I've only seen the highlights. Yeah. But yeah, Stipe won obvious by decision.
Yeah, he's a tough kid, man. Any of those Eastern European kids, man, are just tough kids, man. They really are. A friend of mine who's a photographer here, a guy named Tony Mandarich, had taken some pictures of him and stuff like that. And I know Coleman has helped him out before. And the guy's got talent, man. He's a tough kid.
We've heard that Daniel Cormier might go into professional wrestling now that he's retired. I know you did a small bit of pro wrestling. Do you think Cormier could do well if he crossed over? Yeah,
because I think that he would get the performance part of it. Obviously when you're fighting to win. So sometimes if you're doing a lot of ground and pound, it's not, people that appreciate the sport understand that that's a huge part of the sport. But people that don't understand the sport are looking at MMA, I'm talking about, and watch somebody do some ground and pound. They're like, oh, this is boring. But somebody that understands sport going, oh my God, look at the control on him. He won't let the dude up. Oh, look at him. He's just bound, And so I think Daniel would get the part where it's entertainment. When I did it, the guy's dead now. He's a Japanese guy named Hashimoto. And Hashimoto, when he struck out and did his own gig, it was fun. It was actually fun. In Japanese pro wrestling, they lay it in as hard as you can imagine. I mean, they lay it in as hard as you can. And, it's almost up to to protect yourself, and I know American pro wrestling is a little bit different, how they lay it in and how they, do all their stuff. But in Japan, this is really funny. In Japan, they still really think like their pro wrestlers could get in the ring with a DC and fight with them and be, and it's, our pro wrestler guy's going to win. It's like, no, he would get the crap kicked out of him. So in Japan, they still hold on to that belief that their pro wrestlers are tough guys.
I heard that you got a massive payday for that pro wrestling match you did.
We're talking about the contract that I signed.
Yeah. That's when it cut out.
Yeah, the contract that I signed for somebody going from MMA over to professional wrestling, it just wasn't. You would end up with anywhere from probably a $5,000 to probably $7,500 a night guarantee, and they'd probably do, 5 to probably 8 fight guarantee, not fight, but performance guarantee, and it just happens where. Everything just kind of fell into place. It was actually really fun. It was really fun to do. And, if Hashimoto kept the event going more, I probably would have ended up renewing a contract. But, he ended up getting sick and then ended up dying of a heart attack, actually.
Did WWE ever make you an offer?
What's really funny? Rick brought me out to California to try to train me and a bunch of guys when he had his, what did he call that? He called it like university something, basically where you went out there and you trained in pro wrestling. He had those small little shows on the weekend where you kind of honed your skills, got your routine and stuff. So Rick had presented it. I had been to a couple different WWE shows and talked to Shane McMahon, and I talked to a couple of the other guys, and they're basically like, if you don't have your head screwed on straight, if you get in this and you don't have your head screwed on straight, the industry will just mow you down. You just be a number and a statistic, and that was basically it from everybody that I talked to. Is like, dude, if you're going to make the transition, you have to have things buttoned up. You need to be ready to work. They're on the road a ton. You know, I think he said your first year you'd be on the road 300 days. You know, I'd be like, oh my God, that's like a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's, and I didn't feel at the time that I could make that kind of commitment. So, you know, like anybody that's an A-type personality, if you don't think you can be the best at it, it's like, okay, I'm doing really good with fighting right now. I'm going to stick with that and see what course that runs. And, you know, if there's an opportunity for me to do pro wrestling in the future, I'll let that be.
You have a fan named Rodney here that tipped you $20. He says, thanks for your exciting performances in your prime. He asks, why did you keep fighting after the Tararov loss? Why didn't you retire then? Why did you leave the UFC and Pride after UFC 15?
Oh boy, that's a lot of unpacking there. So I should have retired. And there really isn't a good answer to why. You know, I would have retired with a decent record in TAC. I would have been, I think it was like 12 or 13-3, and I would have retired and been fine. I think at that time when I had sat out long enough, it was a 2.5 year time frame where I sat out from that last fight. And the industry had grown a ton. So there was a lot of regional promoters that were offering just stupid money. I mean, my first fight back, I ended up fighting in the IFL, and they ended up paying me like $75,000. And I had been out of the ring for 2.5 years. And it was the same thing with a lot of the other promotions. To be honest with my fans and to be honest with myself, I have to actually say that, you know, as a competitor, it sucked because I had to eat a lot of my pride just fighting for money. It's something I said I would never do. But, you know, when you get to a point where it's like I had a young child and, you know, my body was broken down and I still needed to make money. So a lot of the fights that I took that I should not have taken because the money was too tempting to turn down. So that much I regret. I mean, that's just being honest with myself and with my fans, that if I could take some of those fights back and rewind the clock, I would, but I can't, obviously. And, you know, some of the other things, that's the first part. What's the second part?
Let me just go back to it for a second. The second part was, why did you leave the UFC for Pride after UFC 15?
Okay, so that was money as well. And it was money and opportunity. And I'll give you a long, short answer for it. So it was still owned by Bob Meyerowitz, and Bob Meyerowitz was not paying any money. It was only legal in 4 states. And you just couldn't make any money doing it. They were offering me, they went from $25,000 for the tournament fights to $50,000 for a single fight. And then Pride got involved, and Pride had offered me $145,000, and they offered for me to fight against Royce Gracie. So it was opportunity and it was money. And then it's just kind of ironic, when the UFC was sold by Bob Meyerowitz to Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, they had offered me one time they offered me a fight, and it was against Pete Williams, and I was still under contract with Pride. They offered to pay me $25,000 to fight Pete Williams. And at the time I was getting paid, you know, 6 figures from the Japanese. And it was like, okay, I'm going to take a chance to fight for the UFC, to fight Pete Williams for nickels, or I can stay with Pride. So I just continued to fight with Pride.
When you were fighting with Pride, did you ever have much dealings with the Japanese mafia? I know for wrestling, they sponsor a lot of wrestlers, and there's some stories from wrestlers about them.
Oh, it's pervasive. I mean, it's the guy that I dealt with was a guy named Mr. Ishizaka. Mr. Ishizaka was Korean. That was the name he used in Japan. His legal name was Kim Duck-Soo was his legal name, and it was there. Mr. Ishii was the guy that did K1, so it's Mr. Ishii and Mr. Ishizaka. It was all over the place. It really was. Nobody talked about it. The only time that it was really brought to a significant emphasis to me is when they had a K1 event in Las Vegas, and a gal named Yokino, who was a vice president of Dream Stage, which they were the operating arm of Pride, came to me, and I was not allowed to take any public pictures with Shishaka. I wasn't allowed to be at the same gaming tables with him. I wasn't allowed to participate on any level. I wasn't allowed to have dinner with him. I wasn't allowed to be seen with him. I wasn't allowed to do anything, because in Japan, I could actually do those things. I could go out to dinner with him. I can go out for entertainment. I could go out, and participate like that, because nobody would take a picture of him there. But if they had Japanese American reporters, I think that they were afraid that they would snap pictures, and it just would break into a scandal that didn't need to be.
You have a guy named Todd that tipped you $5. Thanks a lot, Todd. And a few fans were asking on here, you had such a huge neck in your prime. Is there anything specific you did for your neck routine to get that?
Oh man, you know what, we literally it was like sit-ups, right? So at the end of every practice, almost everybody in a gym you're going to watch in an MMA gym, they do sit-ups at the end of every practice. We would do two things. Like I did a ton of shrugs, because it just builds the base of your neck up. So once your traps get laid down at the base of your neck, you can build a bigger neck on top of it. And then it was just all the different necks. We would do a harness on our necks, and we do a lot of different things like that. Even some of the cable pull machines have a harness that you can put on, and you would do that. And then you do these exercises where you just do isometrics, and you'd actually have somebody pull down on your neck with a towel, and you do this and just fight it back and forth through a whole range of motions, side to side, side to side, side to side, back and forth, back and forth. A ton of isometrics. It was traps to build the base, and then you do some weighted stuff. And once your neck got started getting bigger, it's just one of those things that all of a sudden it's like I look in the mirror and it's like, holy crap, I got a 25.5-inch neck, So it was interesting, because it felt like I could just stiffen up my neck, and I could use it as a battering ram if I need to.
Now, what would you consider the toughest fight of your career to be? You've had a lot of tough fights over the years.
The first fights, just because of the uncertainty of them. Paul Varlin's, I had no idea what was going to happen in that fight as far as what he was capable of. Film study wasn't as big as it is now, because there's such a huge sample size of video that you can watch guys that you're going to fight against. And I knew nothing about Fabio Gugel. It was just said to me, hey, dude, listen, these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, they're like, they do stuff that you just can't pick up until you're caught in. And I was like, oh, that's great. So there's nothing I can study on film or anything. And they're like, nope. That was probably the toughest, is to get through those first series of fights. And then a guy that just for whatever reason I had tough competition with was Igor Vovchanchyn. Just typical Eastern European, just a grinder. Igor was the type of guy that literally you'd have to beat him to death to get him to quit. And you knew it was always going to be a tough fight. So that was probably one of my tougher ones.
Would you ever consider being an MMA coach with all your experience and knowledge?
Yeah. It's the two things. Like after this past, my son, who's 15 years old, he wrestles for his high school here in Arizona, and his coach. I'll concede his coach is a full-time teacher, has a family, and then picks up coaching because it gives him a little extra spread of money during the year. And so after watching his coach and how there's no way to be kind about it, how just uneducated he was about wrestling and just the philosophy of it and how to teach kids, the fundamentals of wrestling and stuff like that. That last year, that got my blood boiling to the point where I'm like, I'll just apply for the wrestling coaching job. And then if I apply for the wrestling coaching job, well, the next succession of it is that I'll have some time, so I'll be able to actually get into MMA coaching. And, it's something I want to do. My body's healed up a little bit over the last year. And so I think that it's physically, I'm capable of doing something that I wasn't able to do even 4 months ago, let alone, 5 years ago.
Todd tipped you another $5, and he has a follow-up question for your neck. How often did you actually work your neck?
Todd, I would do it, at the end of every other practice. So even if you're in the gym 5 days of the week, I would do neck 3 days of the week. In the first month you're going to do it, it sucks because there's nothing worse than when your neck is sore because it's muscles that you normally don't train. And when they get sore, sometimes it can be uncomfortable. And so that first month, you just be prepared to hey, I'm going to have to double up on my Motrin, or, I'm going to take a, hot compress, or have to rub, some kind of, hot and icy on my neck to make it feel better. So at least 3 out of, if you're doing 5 practices, at least 3 of the practices you're doing your neck. And like I said, once you start to build strength in it, then you can add different isometric drills in it. It got to a point where they couldn't hold a towel anymore for my neck, where I'd have to get a lighter training partner, but I'd have them hang on the back of my neck. And I'd just do almost like you're doing pull-ups with a person on my neck. And obviously could be with someone like Rico or some of the bigger guys, because I wasn't capable of doing that. But having your training partner hold a towel when you're just moving the towel up and down and he's yanking down on it as hard as he can. So there's different ways to up the ante with using live partners, using different, you can use bands on it too. But some of that stuff I would at least do 3 days a week.
You mentioned Rico. Do you think he achieved his full potential as a fighter?
No. And I hate to say it because, you're a UFC champion. That's a world champion. That's a pretty high pinnacle. But I thought, me personally, I thought they could have beat Tim to defend it for his first defense. And I thought that he could have had just an incredible run, holding on to that belt for a long time. He's probably one of the most talented kids. He's got a great jiu-jitsu game. He's worked so hard and diligently on his hands. Talent-wise, I think he was one of the best talent guys. I know that his weight fluctuated through the years and stuff like that, but that hasn't been an issue in years and years and years. I think he could have had probably 5 or 6 or more title defenses for the belt.
And Phil tips you $5, and he says, did you ever fight anyone in the late 90s that you felt was stronger than you?
Ooh. I thought Daniel Bobish would be, just because of his build. He's just a big freaking dude, man. Bobish, when I look at him, I go, oh crap, this might be one of those things where you look at a power lifter, and a power lifter is not very defined muscular wise until you grab a hold of him, and he just has a dense pack of muscles. And I thought Bobish would be, and Bobish was strong. Just in some areas I was stronger, especially when I took him off his feet. He just wasn't as strong. Most of the guys that lift heavy like he does are more linear strong, not angles and stuff like that. So Bobish should probably be the closest one.
And Rodney tips you $5, and he says, you mentioned you were offered a fight against Pete Williams by UFC. How do you think you would have fared against him if the fight happened?
Oh, I know Mark Coleman would have made for sure that I would have been ready for it. I think I would have done. I think I would have done good against Pete. He was really good striking skills. Had average ground skills. And at the time that I was fighting, when I was offered the fight, I still was just so heavy ground and pound that, anybody and you know what, in Pride, you weren't allowed to elbow. And in the UFC, you're allowed to elbow. So that would have been just a huge weapon that would open back up. And if you got me on top of somebody and gave me elbows, I just don't think they'd last very long.
Sammy Boy tips you $9.99 and says, "Who gave you the nickname of the Smashing Machine?"
I just went through this. So the Brazilians did. There is a article in, it's not Gracie magazine. It's called, I think, Autonomy, or, oh gosh, man, I'll have to actually pull it up for my sake, but it's, I believe, and I'm butchering this in Portuguese, but it's like Máquina de Bater, the machine that smashes. And so after I fought Fabio Gugel, and what I did with him over a 15 or, I forgot how long it was, 15 or 20-minute fight, they watched me take one of the guys that, I think at the time he might have been a 2 or 3-time Brazilian national champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and just manhandle him. And so, like, oh my God, the Máquina de Bater, the machine that smashes, the smashing machine.
And John wants to know if you ever amateur wrestled Kurt Angle.
Yeah, I actually amateur wrestled him for God. So Kurt was a heavyweight in college, even though that size-wise, Kurt is a little bit smaller than I am. And in college, I was bigger and cut down to 190 pounds. So in college, I never wrestled against Kurt, but I wrestled against him in 1992, 93, 94, 95. And so at one point, I was up where Kurt didn't beat me in those years. Kurt didn't beat me until 1995 when we wrestled and the Freestyle Nationals. We had tied at the Freestyle Nationals. I believe it was 2-2 or 1-1. And he beat me on passivity calls. And then 6 weeks after that, you have the World Team Trials. And I wrestled Kurt again there. And he beat me. You wrestle to make it as the number one guy for the world. You have to wrestle the best out of 3 matches. And so Kurt beat me 2 matches out of 3. And again, it was like 2-2. And 2-2 we tied. 1-1 we tied, but he beat me both times on passivity calls. So our record actually stands where I have 4 wins. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I think we're 3-3. I think I beat him 3 times and he's beat me 3 times.
How would he have fared in an MMA fight against you?
Oh, I would have killed him. he just, the thing that Kurt is so fast. I mean, like, unbelievably quick. I mean, like when you're wrestling against him, there's a match that's coming up. Kurt has a documentary that's coming up, and in that documentary, there's a little bit about me and him and our competitions against each other. And so the 1994 Freestyle Nationals are anyways, we wrestled against each other. He wasn't big enough. He wasn't strong enough. And I was just a bigger, stronger 220-pound wrestler, so I can fend off his attacks. The number one counter for speed in wrestling is strength. And so I was just bigger and stronger. He can get in and attack me. He just couldn't finish it because he wasn't strong enough. And then in 1995, he got in. So in the years, he would end up fighting me at the early part of my MMA career. I was big. It was just, I would have destroyed him. Sorry, Kurt.
And you were portrayed in the movie Foxcatcher. Did you see that, and how did you think of the way they portrayed you?
It's interesting because I didn't come into I didn't come into Foxcatcher until basically almost a whole entire house of cards had fallen down. For the 1993 World Team Trials, John DuPont watched me wrestle, and he had some weird things, like he preferred wrestlers that were born in certain months. And I was a Sagittarius. He preferred Sagittarius wrestlers. It was just one of his little giddy ups. And so in 1993, I signed with Foxcatcher. And then 3 years later, in January, Dave is murdered by John. So I wasn't there for that long. It just was a weird giddy up, and everybody kind of just turned a blind eye towards it because, you know, as wrestlers, we know that every dollar counts. So if someone's giving you $1,200 or $1,500 a month, that covers so much of what you need money for when you're trading. And, you know, I just think that, you know, portrayed things relatively accurate because there's enough people that were around that scene and had enough input and gave a clear enough perspective of really what was going on to give a pretty accurate portrayal of it. It's just interesting because I look back on it and I still get sad, you know, about Dave. And you know, he was my coach, and I didn't go to the funeral. You know, I regret that a little bit, but John's estate was paying for the airfare to go to the funeral, and I felt weird about that. And I figured I would just skip it and mourn it my own way. You know, so there's some stuff that I could have done better for me emotionally, and so it's history books will tell that story over again.
Double S tips you $5 and says, "Can you address the rumors that there were fixed fights in Pride?"
You know, I've spoke about this before, and you know, I would be an idiot if I said there wasn't fixed fights in Pride. I would be a fool to think that there was that much mafia presence around and there wasn't some kind of concessions that fighters had to make. You know, I don't think that any fighter in their right mind would, you know, voluntarily go and seek out, you know, hey, I want to throw the fight, or would you throw the fight for me? You know, I think any of that went on was influenced by, you know, some kind of angle the mob was, you know, that had, you know, certain, you know, betting lines that they needed changed or whatever. I mean, there was so much nefarious things that would go on there culturally that I didn't understand. So I would say I'd be an idiot, like I said. But in order for me to say anybody had one fight fixed or not fixed and didn't fixed and all this, I don't know. Me personally, I never threw a fight. I had them come to me and kind of say it in a roundabout way, and I just had no interest in my integrity and my principles or anything that I was going to present to the public that I felt like, you know, long-term wise, even if they gave me $250,000 and okay, I spend that, I still got my pride to deal with. I'm gonna have my pride for the rest of my life. You know, I'm gonna have my integrity, you know, so I thought that was more important to me than any kind of monetary compensation.
Now, Rick Bassman has actually told this story to me on here about Mark Coleman taking the 60 grand for his dive in that one Pride fight. Were you surprised that Mark did that, or was it just a situation where it was good money for him, you think?
No, it wasn't money. It was opportunity. You know what they ended up doing? And I don't think Rick realizes this. They held Mark's participation in the Grand Prix event over his head if he didn't take what they were offering. So if you think about it, Mark had lost like 3 or 4 fights before the Takada fight. And the only way they were going to allow Mark to move forward was to say, hey, we're going to match you up with Takada. Good news. We'll get you into Pride. And bad news, you're going to lose. You know, and I don't think if there would have been another way, I know that Mark would have took the other way. But if he didn't agree to, my understanding is that if he didn't agree to take a dive with Takada, that he would not have been allowed to participate in the Grand Prix, and that his fighting days would have been over. So you look at it from his perspective, father, young, 2 young kids, 2 young girls, and the UFC was closed to him at that point. And so the only thing that he has is he's got to try Pride. So I honestly can't fault him, you know, and presented with similar circumstances, I can't say that I would have done any different. I know that he had a lot on his plate. I know he regrets it. I know it's a huge regret of his, and I think that he stated that publicly, that it's just something where I just know I've known Mark for 20, God, man, I've known him since 1992. I've known him for 30 years, you know, and we come from the same general area in Ohio. It's just, I know that if there was a different way to do it, I know that he would have did it a different way, and I know he regrets it.
The RMM tips you $2 and says, how often do you lift these days? You still look great.
I'm just starting back. I just got the okay from my doctor to go forward with starting to at least get in the gym to kind of figure out what I can and can't do. I came down with neuropathy, which is in both my legs. Oh God, man, it's almost 4 years ago now. And I got treatment earlier in the year here locally from a doctor. American Physical Medicine is the name of his facility. And he treated me with stem cells. And it's actually worked surprisingly well. You know, it's almost like if somebody's selling like an elixir. You know, drink this and you'll be, you know, have a full head of hair and you'll be 7 foot tall in the morning. You know, you think, oh my God, there's no way. And it's the same thing with stem cells, all the reading, all the research, everything that I've done on them. And the doc, Dr. Vin at American Physical Medicine, it's incredible, man. It really has. I've got a lot of a nerve regrowth in my feet and stuff. So I'm excited to get back in the gym once we get the okay from the governor here in Arizona. So hopefully I'll be back in the gym, look a little bit better.
Phil tips you $5 and says, were you ever close to fighting Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, or Don Frye?
You know, it's interesting. Probably all 3 of them at one point. I know that Ken was a conversation topic with some of the matchmakers for Pride. Ken was looking for work at the time and kind of was stuck in no man's land where he was like, oh, you're going to be a pro wrestler. You're going to get back to fighting. So I know Ken's name came up. Don Frye fought. Don Frye was another one that came up. And Dan Severn, it never really came up seriously because Dan was a little bit past. Dan was a little bit past his prime. I know Dan fought for a long time. And so the 2 serious ones were Ken and we're also going to be Don Frye.
We could do a whole podcast on your amateur wrestling career, but could you briefly sum up your career at Ohio State and winning the NCAAs?
So, oh gosh, man. So, you know what? So at Syracuse University, Devin. So sorry about that. Coleman's Ohio State. Kevin Randleman's Ohio State. I'm Syracuse.
Oh, sorry.
I won a national.
thinking
No,
of Mark
you're good.
Coleman.
Oh, 100%. So I'll pump the brakes here. Mark Coleman, his senior year in college was my freshman year in college. And on the way to winning his national championship, I wrestled Mark Coleman first round, first match of his run to an NCAA title. My senior year is when I won an NCAA championship. And the first, oh God, it was crazy because the first the first 3 years, I didn't even win a match at the NCAA tournament. It took me all the way to my senior year to put together a run mentally. It was all mental. It took me to my senior year. And once that barrier was broken, it opened up a whole new level of wrestling that I had never experienced. It was just like I could, tap into a part of my brain and just function on a subconscious level with wrestling. So my senior year, I ended up wrestling Randy Couture in the finals of the NCAA tournament. And I beat Randy 12-4. He had taken second 2 years in a row and Randy wrestled for Oklahoma State. So it's just kind of one of those ironic things that you tie Randy Couture, myself, Mark Coleman, and Kevin Randleman all together, which is a pretty interesting lot.
What do you think about Syracuse no longer having a wrestling program? I don't think they do anymore.
No, they don't. They don't. I think it's tragic. Like anybody that's heard me talk about wrestling, the thing that I like about wrestling is, all the individual stuff, obviously, it's imano, it's you against another person. It's more of your mind's dueling than it is your physical self. But very few sports offer the opportunity for some kid that's 115 pounds where you can compete at a world championship level or an Olympic level. And that's the beauty about wrestling, is it includes such a diverse bunch of kids. So there's no other sport. Ask a 115-pound kid if he wants to go out for the varsity football team. He'd tell you, hell no. And so that's the thing about wrestling, which I like. And for them to exclude it, it's just a matter of time before they start trying to go after all these smaller Division I sports to try to get them where they just don't exist. And it'll be a sad day when that happens.
Did you ever have any talk about fighting Tank Abbott over the years? He's done a few interviews with us on this channel.
Yeah, I don't think, again, it's one of those where I don't think it was that serious with Tank. But he would have been another good one. He's atypical early UFC participant where you just didn't know. It was like, hey, dude, I think he's tough. And you put him in there and he actually punches like a mule, and it's just kind of interesting because at the early days of the UFC, they just didn't know what was going to be successful in that ring.
There's a fan asking here if you ever saw any backstage fights at an MMA event.
With corners, I have, and with promoters and stuff, but with fighters, no, there might have been some mouthing off and stuff, but 9 out of 10 times, fighters are gonna settle into the ring and they were gonna leave it in the ring. There's still enough respect in the sport where, unless you're doing something stupid, where you're doing like a Conor McGregor and you're taking it to a level it should never be. Talking about someone's religion or family or stuff like that, that's when it can get ugly. But if you're just talking about the individual, I'm going to whip your ass, I'm tougher than you, I'm better, and ask for your mom, that's no big deal. But if you're taking it to a different level, in the back, you're going to get in a fight. When I was doing it, there weren't any Conor McGregors. I mean, it was just guys that were taking it in the ring, they were leaving it in the ring, and that was it.
Who punched the hardest of all the guys that you fought?
Oh, fuck. Oh, God, man. God, Volchansky punched hard. God, why can't I think of his name? I'll circle back to this question because I'm trying to think right now. Volchansky punched pretty hard. And there was, I'll circle back to the question.
I'll give you an easy question. How did this whole situation with The Rock come about where he is apparently going to tell your story in a movie and actually play the role of you?
Just strange. So I'll wind the clock back a lot of years. So I lived in Santa Monica for 3 years. When I was living there, The Rock started in MMA or started in pro wrestling in 1996. I started in MMA in 1997. So 2 years later, so 3 years later, I moved out to California. The Rock was still living there, and I happened to run into him like 1999 when he trained at Gold's Gym, and we just had brief conversation, and that's it. And then my documentary comes out a couple years later. He had the opportunity to look at the documentary, and I ran into him again at Venice, and him and I had a longer conversation, and he said, "Hey, do you want to grab lunch?" And I said, "Yeah." And so we go and we have lunch and we exchange numbers and stuff like that. And then life happens. And, you know, he goes on to do his pro wrestling stuff, and I go on to do my MMA stuff and all these different aspects of it. So a lot of time goes by. And so this is from what he told me and what his agent told me. So recently, last year, he says he wakes up in the middle of the night and he has an idea, and he goes down on his computer. He pulls up the Smashing Machine movie. He watches that. He watches all these other things he can find on the internet. He wakes his manager up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and he goes, "I found my next project. I want to put this together where I'm going to do a movie about Mark Kerr." And so at that point, you know, this is last year, so I'm not really on social media a ton. He tracks down Brad Schlater, his agent, tracks down my ex-wife, Dawn. Dawn gets a hold of me. I call out to Brad, and Brad shares that story with me. Hey, he was in the middle of the night, sleeping, gets up, says, "This is what I want to do." And you know, so Brad Schlater goes about acquiring all the rights. So I had originally sold the movie rights, and I had sold some other rights that are associated with the movie to a production company, and it ends up being where an Israeli gentleman, ended up buying my life rights and my movie rights and some other rights. I didn't know there were so many rights to a documentary, and so The Rock buys them all. And then him and I talked right before he made the announcement at Madison Square Garden. And, you know, he basically said, "Hey, you know, when we had spoke, you know, years back, I wanted to do a project like this. And I didn't have any juice. I didn't have any pull." He goes, "Now I have the ability, I have pull. I can get this done." And so he goes, "Just hang tight. I'm going to make some announcements on Instagram, and we're going to put this thing together, and it'll be fantastic. You're going to have a blast doing it, and we'll bring you on as a consultant, and you know, we'll just put this together to make it fun, and it'll be something that I think that the public will enjoy." And so it's just kind of one of those weird things where, you know, him watching the documentary years and years and years ago, and having that kind of planted in his mind, you know, it just popped in his mind again. He's like, "Oh shit, I can get this done." And probably one of the coolest, you know, I know everybody says this, but probably one of the most gracious, coolest dudes. I mean, he had said to me, he goes, hey, Mark, I just want you to know this is an honor for me to do this, for me to take this on and put everything I have behind it to make it the best possible production and movie that I can. And it's just something that I really think that I can do a great job with. And, everybody involved, I think, will be happy with the product, at the end of the day. So, then obviously COVID hits and all this stuff hits. So, things are still moving forward. I think once COVID kind of breaks loose, they're going to make an announcement for the writer and the director. And once the writer and director, they'll have a distribution studio lined up for it. It's going to be fun moving forward. It's something that I didn't anticipate. I didn't, and part of what I've come to understand is that there's plenty other people in MMA that he could tell Conor McGregor's story, or he can tell, Mark Coleman's story, or Bas Rutten's story, or Kevin Randleman, or he can tell so many different stories of people. And he kind of looks at, what my life was, and it's the struggle that you go through. It's the different stuff that you go through as an individual. So it's really not about the wins, the losses, the championships, because there's been a ton of people that have won way more than I have and had a lot, more entertaining fights than I have. I think it comes down to him being able to tell a story that he believes will come across to as many people as, you deal with stuff. You have ups and you have downs. You have days where you get your dick knocked in the dirt, and you get back up and you do the best you can the next day. And, I think for whatever reason, a lot of that resonates with him. And, I think at this point, the success he has, I think he knows what resonates with the general public. And, he wouldn't take on something that he doesn't, that he doesn't think that he can make the absolute best he possibly can. It's not his style. So I'm excited.
And I hope that one will benefit you financially as well. Did the Smashing Machine, I know it was a documentary, I assume you probably didn't make a fortune off of that one.
No. And part of what Brad had said to me, and also what The Rock had said, just simply, without much detail, in part, him taking this on is to benefit you financially, is to make a difference in where you are in your life and where your life can be moving forward. So, I know that it is part of why he's doing it. I know that, it just seems lately everything he touches just seems to do really, really well. So, it's incredible.
And for your best lifts in the gym, could you tell us, for instance, your squat, bench press, and deadlift?
Oh God, man. I didn't have that big of, my squat was, I just went through this with my son. I could squat just a little bit over 700 pounds. And that was being honest. That's being an honest squat. That's not, that's being legit, honest squat. My deadlift was my deadlift was a little bit more than that. My deadlift was probably I think I did 755 or 755. 705, 755, squat, deadlift, and
bench press.
Squat, deadlift, and bench.
Yeah.
My bench was 435. My best on that.
Okay.
So 435.
500.
No, you know what, man? Here's the whack part about it. I have long arms, right?
Yeah.
And that's a shit ton of distance to travel, man, to move 500 pounds. I even tried moving my grip way out, but once I got to a certain point, I just lost strength. So there's like the optimal grip on your bench where I not in too tight because that cuts my strength too, not out too far because that cuts my strength. Here's my optimal pushing range, but it still was a long distance to go to move any kind of weight. So It's something actually I wanted to, and I don't think it's in my future just to have a 500-pound bench. It's something I wanted to, but I had such strong legs. My legs were just legit, man. But I did squats. Go figure.
Yeah. Luke tipped you $9.99. He says he's been a fan of you since the Pride days, and he hopes you're doing well.
I appreciate that, buddy. And just, for everybody that's tuned into this, man, just thank Devin for reaching out. I appreciate it, man. I really do, because a lot of this is stuff I really like doing. I don't mind answering people's questions, fans' questions, not fans' questions, and I try to be as forthright and as honest as possible as I can. I got nothing to hide at this point. I mean, the gig's up, right? And so I just appreciate all the fans, and I'll be having some stuff coming up here, and some stuff released on Instagram, and I'm gonna start to get more active on it once this COVID stuff breaks loose. So I'm gonna try to get some lifting tips, like once a week I'll have like some lifting tips, and just smashing machine secret lifting stuff, or whatever it is, just stuff that I used to do. And stuff that I used to do wasn't that complicated. It wasn't that complex, because the simpler I kept my training, the less likely it was that I was going to get injured. So a lot of it's just basic stuff, man. But hopefully I'll be able to start doing something like that in the next couple of months. So some of the stuff you'll be able to post comments and questions on Instagram. I'll be able to answer it. For some, if I have enough time, I'll be able to do little videos where you'll be able to see some of the what I did, usually this and this and this. So hopefully, hang on. Hopefully it'll be in the next couple of months, okay?
What is your Instagram so people can look it up and add you?
Say that again?
What is your actual Instagram account under for people that want to find it on Instagram?
It's Mark Kerr TSM.
Okay.
So it's Mark Kerr, the Smashing Machine. And I got knocked out of here when this call came in. So just give me 1 second to plug back in. Okay. Shoot, I'm afraid. We're almost to the end here. So can you still hear me?
Yeah, we're wrapping up. I hope that we can actually have you back on again, though, maybe in a few weeks, and do this again, because there's a lot of questions, but I know you're a busy man.
Hey, Devin, I appreciate it, man. Thank everybody for coming on. I'll stay in touch. Stay in touch with me, kind of as this stuff. Like I said, when this unfolds, man, you and I will spend time on it. Tips only is fine, stuff like that. I mean, I appreciate everybody that tip. Believe it me or not, as stuff has come down with COVID, $5 sometimes makes a difference. So I appreciate everybody just reaching out and their questions. So there'll be another opportunity coming up in the next month.
Excellent. And the last thing I'll ask you about to close this off, we have the big fight between Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. coming up in November. Any prediction?
Oh, Tyson. I mean, Tyson still looks like a god, man. I mean, I've watched him train here in Phoenix in person, and just like I can't define or adequately describe the sound his punches make on a water punching bag. I can't describe it. It's the only kind of sound that when you hear it in person, you go, holy crap. Just like when you look, when you're at a ballpark and you hear somebody hit a baseball with a wooden bat out of the ballpark, there's no other sound like that. So it's incredible. I mean, I would take Tyson day in, day out, month in, month out. I just hope he doesn't kill Roy Jones.
I actually almost fought Roy Jones a few years ago, but the Arizona Boxing Commission wouldn't sanction it. He had an open challenge. I wanted to have it, whether I would win or not, but they wouldn't. That would have been great. That would have been fantastic, man. Oh my God. Oh, so do you have anything you want to close up with? I know you got to get going, but any final comments for the fans here?
No, just again, man, I really appreciate you guys. I do. And I don't do this often enough. And it's something I'm going to start doing more and more and more.
I just want everybody to know how much I appreciate their questions, and I appreciate them being my fans through the years. It does mean a lot, man. It's a crowded place with how many, fighters are out there now. So I appreciate everyone for still being a fan. Thank you.
Oh, these are Mark Kerr. I'm getting ready to do an interview right now for Hannibal TV. I'm a 2-time UFC champ. Stay tuned.
This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, and I'm with former UFC champion, the star of the Smashing Machine movie, possibly a character on who The Rock is going to play in the coming year or two, possibly in a future movie. The Smashing Machine himself, Mark Kerr. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. Surprise, surprise. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing really good. Surprise, I didn't expect you to be in town, pocket dialing me, and then, so it's all good, man. Glad to actually meet up with you in person.
Well, to start this, it's great to meet you in person, and you're looking very healthy. How are you feeling these days?
I'm feeling actually really good. We were talking earlier about why you're in Arizona, and besides it being freezing cold in Texas. So I actually got what you got the other day with stem cells and stem cell shots in my feet, and it's 100 million times better physically for me. The bottom part of my legs and feet are healing, and they've stabilized, which is a really, really, really good thing. It enables me to actually, I was saying earlier to you that I was on a mountain bike for a couple hours today, and last year this time couldn't even imagine it.
You also recently overcame COVID, which you caught back in January. How was that experience?
It was interesting. I mean, it's just, what the crazy part is? It has, what I'm saying to you is it has such a different effect on everybody. And my immune system, the initial attack of the virus, my immune system handled it really well. It lingered really for about, I'm going to say for between 14 and probably 18, 19 days, and had these residual headaches that were just brutal, but my respiratory system got attacked, but like I said, my immune system handled it fairly well. So I'm just fortunate. I know not everyone has a story that's even close to that, but I'm fortunate.
What is your opinion on that whole situation now? Arizona is pretty open right now with the lockdown compared to some other states.
I think it's about time. It's just one of those where everybody knows what the implications are. Like I seen you earlier, the gentleman that I help out and live with, he's 80 years old, and I gave him the virus, and his immune system had a really good response to it. It started attacking the virus right away. He did what most people do. He slept 18, 19 hours a day. And no real big complications. His immune system and his respiratory system, pretty much stayed on top of it the whole time. I just want to see everything opened up. It's long overdue.
I did an interview with Don Frye a couple of days ago, and he seemed a little angry at you over something. I don't know if it's that you're getting the movie made by The Rock and not him, but do you have any idea what that heat could be about?
No, did he expand on it at all?
When I asked him to expand, he drank out of a horse trough, spit the water out. And
so the only other thing that Don Frye and I have had close quarters on was when Brock Lesnar
yes, he mentioned that.
When Brock came out of basically Brock was trying to make the Minnesota Vikings, and he made it down to the last cuts, and I had crossed paths with Brock years and years earlier, and I said to him, just in passing, I said, hey dude, if you ever decide you're going to get into fighting, just look me up. I'll be pretty easy to find. And Brock came down to Arizona. He actually went down and saw Don Frye first. I got contacted by Brock's lawyer and says, hey, Brock wants to get a hold of you. I had a conversation with Brock. He said, here's what I'm going to do. And he came down here. He had Don Frye evaluate him, and he had me evaluate him. And then they kind of figured out between us to which person he wanted to come up and help him establish a camp and a training routine in Minnesota. And so if Don's jealous because he picked me over him, that's like, it's almost like a date. It's like a chick picking one dude over another. But it wasn't. It literally, he was like, dude, Brock was saying, it's difficult because both of you guys have different qualities in different areas where you specialize in. And I think for Brock, he identified more with me because of my wrestling background and Brock's wrestling background, collegiate wrestling background. And so I went up to Minnesota for a month. And, Brock and I actually ended up not on good terms. At the time I was probably not on my best behavior, and had showed up to, Brock's morning workout at 6 in the morning, and I hadn't been to bed from the night before. And, and Brock was so far beyond that. That was something that he was doing years before that, at his house, at his place in Minnesota with his wife, his kids. That was no place to bring that kind of shit. And I brought it to his doorstep, and we had a conversation, and he decided it would be in my best interest and his best interest if we just part ways. And that was, I was up there for about a month, and he had set up just an incredible facility. He had gotten a boxing coach, he had gotten, training partners and everything, and that was when he was getting ready for the UFC. So, if anything, I owe him an apology.
What was the training like with him for the time that you did it for that 1 month?
Oh God, it was brutal. And part of this is like Mark Coleman. Mark Coleman, where he lacked in talent, he made up for in work ethic. Brock had talent, and he made it up in work ethic as well, where he just blew by everybody. And he would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's when he would expect me to be there, be ready to work out. We would do sprints up and down the driveway. He lived about a half mile from the main road. And then we would go in the gym, start working out in the gym, and he would do what he needed to do during the afternoon, and then we'd have another practice, if not another 2 practices. So, he worked hard, man. There's no doubt about his work ethic, and, he's a talented guy.
How did you match up with him on the practice mats, considering you were a lot more experienced?
Honestly, man, he was still close to 300 pounds. I couldn't move him. I just couldn't move him. Plus, at the time when he came out, probably have to look up year-wise. I had been removed from fighting for probably about 4 years, so I wasn't as big and as muscular as I was, and as in good a shape. And Brock was still. I saw a picture of him, and you know what this is going to look like, where he's got his little tight black, shorts on, and he's like 325 pounds with a 6-pack of abs.
Yeah.
He was just a freak of nature, and so he wasn't quite that big, but he was a big boy.
How old were you when you started in amateur wrestling?
Oh my gosh, man! My first amateur wrestling event was when I was 5.
Wow.
And my mom had lied about my age because it was like 8. I think age groups was like 7 and 9, or it was like 6 to 8 or something. And my mom just kind of wrote in my age, and I ended up taking 3rd. I remember having this little tiny trophy where I ended up taking 3rd. But I didn't take wrestling serious again until I was like 14 years old.
And what made you get into it more seriously then?
I lived in Iowa. I moved from Ohio to Iowa. I went to Bettendorf, where Pat Miltich went to school, and they had an incredible wrestling program. And it's almost like if you're gonna play football for Bettendorf, you had to wrestle, or vice versa. If you're gonna wrestle, you had to play football. They had state championship programs in both of them.
Okay. Did you play football as well?
I did. It's kind of funny. My son asks me this question all the time. He's like, "Why did you choose wrestling?" Yeah. It's just I got scholarship offers to the mid-majors like University of Toledo, Central Michigan, Kent State, Ball State, and I wanted to concentrate on one sport, so I took the wrestling scholarship to Syracuse instead.
What were some of the highlights of your college career in Syracuse, and how did you like living in Syracuse?
Oh, Syracuse was cold. It was cold. Beautiful city. I mean, beautiful city if you look at it during the summer. Incredible. Really fun to be up there near a lot of stuff. You know, you're about 5 hours from New York City. You're right near the Finger Lakes. You're like 4 hours or less to Toronto, Canada, which is a blast. Niagara Falls, Lake Oswego, Lake Ontario. You know, just a lot of stuff to do up there in the summer. Wrestling wise, obviously, when I won an NCAA championship for them, that was the crowning, achievement of a lot of years of frustration. You know, I end up in the NCAA tournament. My final NCAA record is 5 wins and 4 losses. So all it takes is one, right? And so my friends would ask me, it's like, hey, would you rather been like a 3-time All-American or an NCAA champ? And obviously my answer is like an NCAA champ. You know, it's, you carry that with you like a world champ, UFC champ, Abu Dhabi champ. You carry that with you no matter what happens. It doesn't matter what station you are in life, you're always going to be an NCAA champ or a World Cup champ.
Did they give you any money when you were wrestling for Syracuse for food and stuff?
They did. They do have, we would get these things called Shine cards. You had this place called the Shine, which is like a student center cafeteria. Yeah. And so on the card, every semester you would get loaded up X amount of dollars, depending on what your scholarship was. But it was a food card. You couldn't buy anything else with it. So it sustained you. If you spent all your money in the first 2 months, you're borrowing and stealing off the rest of the wrestlers to get food. You know.
So what made you go into the martial arts aspect of fighting? Obviously, you had the wrestling background.
Yeah.
Was there any thoughts of the Olympics or anything?
96. I originally ended up in Arizona trying to chase an Olympic dream. I moved out here from Syracuse. I was assistant wrestling coach at the time. I quit that position to move out here to train for the 96 games in Atlanta. And that was kind of the impetus that started me on the journey where I ended up, doing MMA. It just happened to bump into a guy, and Dan Sever knows this guy. It's a guy named Rich Hamilton. And Rich Hamilton knew Dan, watched Dan get in the UFC. Rich Hamilton says he's responsible for it, and Dan would probably say differently. But Don Frye, Rich Hamilton claims he got Don Frye into, and then Mark Coleman, and then me. So the ones that are factual is he got Mark Coleman a contract, and he got me a contract with the UFC. That's factual. Dan's relationship with Richard Hamilton and Don Frye, that's up for them to clear up. So I don't know.
So had you had much grappling training or stand-up training by that point, or you just wanted the money?
No, I just wanted the money, man. As a wrestler, Dan and Don can, any wrestler can tell you, you're doing it for the love of it. You're not obviously doing it for the money. And back then, the year that I quit coaching, between USA Wrestling, the grants that you got from the Olympic Committee, and everything else, I was making like $25,000 a year. So when someone offers you to fight in the UFC and you make $25,000 in one night, it's like, okay, where do I sign up? You figure one of two things. You figure you're going to have the moxie to suck it up and fake it basically through the areas where you don't know what you're doing out there, right? You're going to have the athleticism or the conditioning just to exhaust a person.
So how was your first experience in an MMA cage?
It was brutal, to be honest. Even though I won the fights, even though I beat Paul Varlins, who just passed away, I posted on the Instagram, everyone remembers their first, it's like, you're going to remember the first person you pro wrestled against, right?
Yeah.
You gotta remember, it's like he's my first,
Yeah.
And so it was scary because I just didn't know. And a lot of what happened out there when I was in the ring was just autopilot. It was like totally reactionary. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew enough to get the job done. And so by the time I ended up making it to Fabio Gugel, that's when it was real. Fabio Gugel's he's a fighter.
Yeah.
He does even though it's jiu-jitsu, it's fighting. And so he was out there to take my head off. And that was brutal. That was 15 minutes of just banging.
And Don Frye brought up that he didn't necessarily believe that you were afraid to fight because you've said in the past that you had a fear of fighting. So.
I haven't hung out with Don Frye enough for him to clarify my own thoughts, right? And I don't want to start a beef with Don. He's a good dude, but so genuinely, and this is the absolute truth.
Yeah.
Like before my first professional fight, I had been in 2 fights. 2. And I literally, one where it was like 5-on-1 of my college roommate my senior year.
Yeah.
And the other one was when we got in like a wrestler defend your wrestling teammate brawl and I punched the dude in the mouth. Other than that, I was a spectator. It was like I'd make sure that like if you had a bunch of dudes fighting, I'd make sure that like 4 dudes didn't jump on one guy. I would step in and just start sorting things out, not fighting, right?
Yeah.
So like legitimately when I get in the ring for the first time, I don't have like Mark Coleman's been in a shit ton of street fights.
Right.
Kevin Randleman, he was in a bunch of street fights, a bunch of bar brawls, right? I wasn't the dude jumping in bar brawls. I was like, as big as I was at the time, I was like, you know what? If I get in a bar fight, you know what they're going to do? Go to their car, get a gun, come in and shoot me.
Right.
They're going to take one look at me and go, no fucking way, They're going to be like, Billy, go get the gun.
When did you first meet Mark Coleman?
1989.
And did you guys get along right away?
1988, I'm sorry, 1988.
Okay.
88. He was a senior in college, and I was a freshman.
Did you guys connect right away?
We were competitors, so no.
Oh. Really?
We were competitors. Mark was, God, man, when he was competing, he was just, now people don't understand what he was like, before. Now you can't, now Mark loves to talk, right? If you get him in the right mood, he'll talk for hours on end. When Mark was competing, it was completely opposite. He was stone cold. It's really funny. So prior to the 1992 Olympics, we were training in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and Mark Coleman and I were roommates when we were still wrestling. And I don't know him that well, and they put us 2 together because I'm wrestling 198 pounds, he's wrestling 220. We're training partners, but not competitors, because we were competitors, we won't be roomed together, right?
Right.
And so this gives you an idea of Coleman. So he's sitting on the bed, and I'm on the other bed, and I hear him mumbling, and he's sitting there, and he's going, "Where's the fucking motherfuckers?" And I was like, so I hear it, and it goes away, and then I hear, "Goddamn motherfucker, son of a bitch, motherfucker," and then it goes away again, and then the third time I hear it, I sit up and I go, "Hey, who are you cussing at?" Because I think he's cussing under his breath at me.
Right.
And I go, are you cussing at me? And he goes, "No. The remote control fell on the ground. I'm too lazy to pick it up, and I hate what's on TV right now." So he literally is cussing at the remote control because he's under the covers, and the AC is all tuned up, and he's relaxing, getting ready for the afternoon's training session, and he's cussing the remote out because the remote slipped off the foot of the bed and it's on the floor, and he doesn't want to pick it up. And he hates, I think it was like Judge Wapner or whatever on TV, and he's cussing out the remote and the TV.
Did you ever witness any of his street fights back when you guys were hanging out?
Some of them are legendary, like Ohio State, like the Ohio State Bar District. When you go down there, some of them are legendary.
Really?
I mean, with Randleman and him, they were like the two-man wrecking crew.
I'm surprised that anyone would even try and mess with them.
When you're drunk, when you tie on that level of stupidity, you'll go ahead and try stuff on that doesn't fit. And like Mark Coleman and Kevin both wouldn't fit.
You used to be a partier, obviously. You overcame all that. When did that start? Was that from high school, or was that
from high school, it was a lot. I smoked a lot of pot in high school. But whenever it was like wrestling season or football season, I drank beer. Wrestling, I didn't do anything because it was just like a sacred, journey. It was really weird how I treated wrestling, completely different than football. Football was more Neanderthal. Wrestling was more like a sacred thing because it was just me. So wrestling, I didn't do anything. And then in high school, out of high school, going into college, didn't party a lot. Treated it really seriously. My senior year, I finally had a couple of beers during wrestling season, which I had never done before. And then all the way up until I moved out here, training for the Olympics, everything, I really wasn't a big partier. And then after age 27, and I started fighting, that's when all that started picking up.
Just because people would buy you drinks or want to go out with you?
It's a completely different lifestyle.
Okay.
Even in the areas you hang out in pro wrestling, you know what that lifestyle is.
Oh, yeah.
It's just completely different, completely different,
How were the ladies? Were they there?
I just had this conversation, some of this, with my son, and it's just like, I said, you just don't understand. You just don't, because he calls me goofy and weird, like, Dad, you're goofy, stop, because it's just one where, that kind of lifestyle, if you want to abuse it, you can.
Yeah.
And you can go excessively where you can either have one or the other. You can have it all. You can have money, drugs, women, sex, all of that stuff. Or you could have, sex as your giddy up or whatever it is, And I modestly did, had my flings with the women, and then excessively, partied and, tuned it up.
I guess you were the UFC champion, and they just wanted a piece of you.
Yeah, in Japan it was bad.
Oh yeah, worse in Japan.
Yeah, they just have a hero worship for a lot of their, their like pro wrestlers, mixed martial artists, pro athletes, all of that. It's like a hero worship culture. Things have changed a little bit there, but back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was incredible.
Did the Japanese mafia ever take you out when you were over there? Because they're known for sponsoring dinners and so forth.
Yeah, it was. So the original Pride company, the production part of it was called KRS.
Yeah.
And the guy that owned KRS was a guy in Japan. You called him Mr. Ishizaka. In his real name, he signed all his documents, Kim Duk-soo. He was Korean.
Okay.
But if you were anything but a Japanese blood, you had to have a Japanese name to do business.
Yeah.
Really successful guy with Plinko parlors and stuff like that. He was a gentleman that, for whatever reason, took a huge liking to me. And so every time that I would go there, he would request that I would come a week early. So I normally flew over a week early before the fight. So I'd have to fly over there 2 weeks before the fight, because the first 5 days I'd have to go and hang out and drink and party with him. And then I would just get back into my training routines and get ready for the event. So
it's too bad he wouldn't do that after the fight.
Oh God, yeah.
That's bad timing.
It's really bad timing. So to give you an idea, so when they had a K1 kickboxing event in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And when they had that event, Mr. Shizaka came over for that event. I was not allowed to be photographed with him in public I wasn't allowed to be seen with him in public. I wasn't allowed to have dinner with him. I wasn't allowed to have any association with him at all publicly.
Why?
Because I think the Japanese promoters were trying to get a foothold in Vegas, and so if my thinking was if they did any investigating at all for the money behind the K1 event, that's really breezy. If they did any investigating at all for the people behind the K1 event and find out they were mafia tied or that the fighters were friendly with them in that capacity, I think it would have really hurt their chances of having something. So even Pride had their event here when Cole fought the Emperor, Vader.
Oh, Vader or Emilio?
Yeah, Cole fought him in Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was Pride's last event before they sold out to the UFC.
I see.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a K1 offer?
No, I got pro wrestling offer. We had talked about this earlier a little bit. So, so at the point where I accepted a pro wrestling offer, it was orchestrated by Antonio Inoki.
Okay.
His son signed me with a pro wrestler named Hashimoto. Hashimoto's dead. Hashimoto was kind of the George Foreman-like character in Japan. You know, always had, you know, big Japanese guy.
Yeah.
Always like eating something like George Foreman. You know, George Foreman made light of him being a huge Jew.
Yeah.
Right? So he actually got a huge deal for me. I'd never done pro wrestling in Japan, and it was, you know, it was over, my first contract was over 400 grand.
Wow.
Yeah. And the part about it which blew everyone away, they had to come up with half of it before my second event. So I could do one event, they paid me a certain amount. Second event, they had to pay me half amount, and then they had to pay almost the whole contract, even before the contract was 30% over.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So was that better than fight money for you in some respects?
In some respects, because it was easy money.
Yeah.
You know, it was easy money. The last event I did before the company folded, so they paid me.
Was that Heroes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So they paid me 75% of my contract, and they only got 4 shows into a 10-show kind of card they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And so the last event I did was in Osaka with Animal and Hawk, and it was a guy named Tom Howard.
I know him.
We did a tag team event. You'll have to look it up. It's got to be somewhere on film. We did a tag team event, and I don't remember who put who over. I don't remember the specifics of it because at the time I was still partying a ton. You know, and all the promises you say like, I'm never going to do this and have beers before. You know, I had beers before I got in the ring and all this other stuff.
Well, for wrestling, sometimes it doesn't matter.
No, sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it could help.
It actually did. It actually did. Because we were hitting these high spots.
Yeah.
We were hitting these high spots, and Tom could do this like helicopter spinning back kick.
Yeah.
And we had timed it where he's going to end up in the apron. You know, he's going to end up not on the apron, but in the corner.
Yeah.
And he did this helicopter spinning kick where they were supposed to tag in the guy. He's supposed to duck under, just get in the ring, and Tom was just supposed to miss him. And we couldn't make it happen in practice. We just couldn't get the timing right. But Tom and I had drank before we did it, and sure enough, man, you get in the ring in front of a good-sized crowd, and he hits it. Something all week long he ain't been able to do.
Did Rick Bassman have anything to do with your contract?
Yeah. At a point when I was still fighting, though, when Rick was involved. Rick has always been kind of around the periphery of a lot of different things, and you know, I'm still actually really good friends with Rick to this day. You know, we get together with a good men's group, you know, and stuff like that. So he's gone through hell, you know, and he's still surviving, which is an amazing thing.
He set up Mark Coleman's work shoot. Did you ever get any offers like that from him?
Yeah. And then, God, man, Rick came up with a bunch of stuff. You know, I probably could have stopped fighting and got into pro wrestling if I had just listened to Rick a little bit more, what direction he was trying to point me. Because he had enough ties and enough connections. You know, I have a really cool picture of my son when my son was like 3 with John Cena. Okay. And Rick had got me tickets here, and I didn't understand that Vince runs a really tight like locker room when they come into a city. So he doesn't want a bunch of people back there, everyone snapping pictures and slapping asses, right? Yeah. And so I had my son in my arms. I was like, hey, John, I had flagged him down not knowing if he knew me or not. And I was like, hey, you mind taking a picture with my son? So he's got a picture with my son, and then he's got a picture of before Brock got into fighting. He's got a picture of Brock. And so just kind of one of those cool things where you have his little star-studded, little picture book.
Did you have any serious talks with WWE at any point?
I think I got more. Yeah, I had talks about, I think they understood that I had a little bit of a drug problem at the time, and the conversations I had with them were, this is chess, not checkers. So if you're going to step into this league, you can't have any of those weaknesses basically poking through, because with the travel schedule and the work schedule, there's no way you're going to be able to keep it up. No way you're going to be able to keep it up. That was the conversation, was basically like, if you get clean and you get sober, come back and see us.
Let's say after this movie comes out where The Rock is playing you and they made you an offer to come in for a match or two, would you do something like that?
Yeah, for sure. That would be excellent. Can you imagine me against Rock in real life?
That would actually
Rock
be cool.
plays like he plays on TV. If we fucking go, I don't think they can pay him enough money. I really don't.
No,
he's beyond that. Rich. He's so beyond that,
But that would be interesting. The real.
Oh God, would that be fun? Would that be? Oh my God, you could build that thing across the board. Oh my God, that would be awesome.
What's the status of that now? Is COVID still slowing it, or?
Yeah, so after they ended up, so he just filmed Red Notice. He just filmed like the Rock Years, the one that's on NBC. Yeah. So that was filmed because actors play him. He's not in it. It's his life story. So his production company had a lot to do with that. So we're looking at this thing actually still having a chance at the end of this year to get filmed and be a 2022 release. In like I don't know if I talked to you about it. Like now, you make Avengers Endgame, you're seeing a $200 million movie in the movie theater, right?
Yeah.
You make a $60 million movie, you're watching it on Netflix.
Right.
That's the paradigm which has shifted, right? So, any of the Marvel, any of the huge movies are going to be in the movie theaters. Movie theaters are going to look completely different. You're not going to have a 14 or 18 plex. Yeah. You're going to have like a 6plex. So it'll be simultaneously released on a bunch of different platforms. Netflix is the one that's going to be the one that's gonna sponsor it and have it on their platform, be the distributor of it, all of that.
Are you going to be there as a consultant throughout the filming?
Yeah, which I'm excited about. And that was talked about from my first conversation with DJ The Rock, and his agent and everything was like, hey, this is what we're setting up for you. We'll figure out what title you want. If you want associated producer, if you want executive producer, or however you want it, and we'll make it fun for everybody involved.
Have you read the script yet?
No, I haven't. That's the last one. That, you know, it's funny. This was just asked the other day. You know, even if I had objections, it's just like, he's doing my life. He want my life story. He can do what he wants, you know. But he's gracious enough and accommodating enough from the conversations I've had with him that that he would listen. You know, he wants to do it justice, and he wants to do me justice.
What are you going to do differently this time if that gives you, which I can't see it not happening, another jolt of fame?
You know, lessons learned is that, you know, fame was never about, it should have, if I would have taken the focus off of fame being about me, you know, fame was about an opportunity that I could have given my family, and I could have given my wife, you know, just at a lifestyle and an opportunity to experience things that they would not have been able to experience, you know. And I focused all of that on me, like what it does for me, and having that kind of attitude, it just brought a lot of misery with it, because it, you know, me was never enough. It was never enough, and you know, it caused a lot of issues because I just didn't understand how powerful that was.
Are you remarried now?
No. Nope. So, you know, I have a 16-year-old son that occupies, you know, quite a bit of my time, and then he's the one that gave me COVID, by the way. So he gets his driver's license and a car before Christmas. So he goes from February of last year, March, February, when COVID really started ramping up, all the way until he gets his driver's license. So he didn't pass anything to me. He didn't give me a virus. He was in a carrier, all of that. He gets a driver's license and a car, and within a week, he gives me COVID.
Wow.
Yeah. And he gave me he does this number. He goes, "Oh, by the way, Dad, I lost my taste and my smell like 3 or 4 days ago." And I was like, "Oh my God, dude." I go, that would have been like really good information, like the day it happened. So we had him tested. He was positive, and then obviously I was positive, and my buddy Richard, he was positive, and anybody we were in close proximity with was positive. So
did they give you any medication, or did they tell you just take it easy?
Just take it easy. Yeah. They said, we went to, like I was saying to you, we went to Mayo Clinic, and they're absolutely surgical in how they handle it. It's, you know, they don't ask for insurance, they don't ask for any of that, man. They're there just to diagnose and let you know what's going on. I had my results within 6 hours after I took the test, and it was absolutely fantastic.
What was the catering like backstage difference between UFC and Pride? Some fans wanted to know.
You know what, which is even crazier is in Japan, it was a lot of unfamiliar foods.
Yeah.
So when you're in Japan, the one thing that I like about it, they have a lot of fresh food, like prepare it in front of you. Like when you do teppanyaki, right? They make the food in front of you. They have noodle places where they make the food in front of you, all of that. And then their catering is something a little different because a lot of the stuff is sea-based, right? Right. So they have like oysters, and they have this and that. And before you fight, you're not going to have oysters and shellfish, and so the UFC was better, but in those days that I did the UFC, it was like sandwiches, but it was stuff I recognized, so I consider it better.
What was winning the UFC championship like for you?
Oh, for me at the time, it was huge. Because it did a couple different things. It gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me confidence that I didn't know that I had, that I could fight, right? Because like I told you, it's like I'm not a big street brawler or bar brawler, so it gave me a lot of confidence that I could fight, and then it validated me. So it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
How did it affect your training? Because a lot of some people will kind of slack off once they become champion. So
the one thing, after UFC number 15, the one thing it did, it actually reminded me that if I wanted to be good at this, that I needed to go figure out who was the best available trainers or training partners to me. And that's when I partnered up with Bas Rutten, Marco Huaz, Oleg Tatarov, and Pedro Hizo. That's where I went out to California, and I just said, even though I've been in a fight, in a ring, a professional, I don't know I have no clue what I'm doing. And so those guys kind of brought me under their wing, especially Bas. Brought me under their wing, just said, hey, listen, here's where you need to focus. This is where you're good at. This is what you need to do. And it was the best thing I ever did in my life.
And you said before Abu Dhabi was almost more of an accomplishment than UFC. Could you explain that?
Abu Dhabi was a lot more inclusive. It had guys from Russia, guys from the United States, guys from Brazil. It had guys from all over the world. So when you're competing against in an international field like that, for me it validated it more. Because when you're fighting in the UFC or fighting in Pride, you're fighting against one person, right? Yeah. So over at Abu Dhabi, like to win an event, I had to win 5 just to win my weight class, and then I had to win 4 to win the Open, and then the next year I could be in the super fight. So it was I had to win 9 bouts to win the all around.
Do you still talk with Rico Rodriguez?
Oh, that just came up. No, and that's something where I have to reach out to him. It's long overdue. Long overdue.
What happened in that Fujita fight where you looked slimmer and you had shaved head and everything?
Yeah. So prior to the Fujita fight, I had just gotten done with an Abu Dhabi tournament 5 weeks before that, and so that training style for Abu Dhabi, that thinned me out. I had to be in a lot better conditioning just because of the 9 bouts that I did over there, and I couldn't put the weight back on. And at the time, I was just starting to use for the first time growth hormone, and the growth hormone pulls a lot of sugar out of your body when you use it. And so I didn't understand that when I got in the ring, I bled out all my sugars.
What's the difference between growth hormone and steroids anyways?
Okay, so I'll explain it like this. So you have something called androgenics, which are testosterone, or androgen. They affect your hormonal system. You have anabolics, which affect your muscles. They're directly related to how your muscle builds and grows, right? And then you have growth hormone, which is like an engine. It regulates stuff. So when you add growth hormone in, it's gonna kick in your metabolism. It's gonna speed up the way your body synthesizes proteins and turns it into muscle and stuff like that. So it's an engine that drives those 2 different systems, right? So growth hormone, I didn't understand a lot about it at the time that I was using it, and that kind of contributed to what happened in the Fujita fight. I lost is what happened, and he beat my ass, but on the other side I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing.
Did you find that steroids affected your cardio negatively when you were on them?
First time I ever did them, yeah, I did, because I just carried a ton of muscle mass, just mass that shouldn't have been there, because I didn't need that much horsepower.
For the bodybuilders out there, I know you don't approve of this, but I know they always want to know, like, what was the best, most effective cycle for you?
Oh gosh, man. You know what I did? It's like it was progressive. I remember the one cycle that I did. I started with a harder, like a Dianabol. Starting with a harder anabolic. And then moving from that to ones that kind of lean you out. So I remember one like packed on a bunch of weight on me, and then the next one that I did kind of thinned me out mediumly, like thinned me out. And then the next one I did like thin me out to where muscle striations, all of that. And then I remember the last thing that I took was something called haloteston, which is they used to have a nickname for it. The pill was green, and they used to call it the green meanie, because it just gave you a disposition of like a like a caged honey badger.
So in your experience, there is the roid rage, because some people will deny that actually happens.
You can. I mean, hormonally, like it, insulin's a hormone. You give me the wrong amount of insulin or don't feed me and have my blood sugar go up and down and put me behind the wheel of a car, I'm an asshole. Realistically, and somebody go, oh, you just haven't eaten. You eat, you go, oh shit, I feel better. Because it affects your hormonal levels.
What was your diet usually like during your prime years?
Shit, man. I ate, I call them hard and soft meals. So I would eat 4 hard meals, 4 soft meals, and then I'd have good snacks in between. So like get up in the morning and have a protein shake. I go to the gym, I work out. After the workout, I would eat again, and that would be getting the right amount of protein, right amount of carbs and all that. And then I would rest, eat again, go to the gym, eat again, rest, go to the gym, eat again, go to the gym, eat again, eat again. So I would eat just basically it'd be about every 2.5 hours.
Wow. Lots of protein, I guess.
Ton. And the only way that I could accomplish that was having, some hard meals and soft meals. So literally you would get, so I'd have to eat 4 hard meals. So I'd have like chicken, broccoli, and something else, or and then drink 4 meals a day. Because there's no way me personally, I could eat 8 times a day. I just would become absolutely just tired of chicken or beef or flank steak or whatever it is. So it all worked out.
How did you find the Japanese fans compared to the U.S. fans?
Back then, way more educated, way more culturally understanding of like what I was out there was almost like they treated you with like a lot more reverence than American fans. American fans were like, kick him in the balls, and now an American fan knows what they're seeing. They understand the grappling part of it. They understand all of that. So,
what foreign country that you fought in treated you the best when you competed?
Still Japan. I had fun in Brazil. But Brazil culturally is a little bit different than what Japan is.
Do you still follow UFC at all?
In the last 2 years, I started following a lot more.
What would be your advice for young fighters if you could talk to young fighters getting into MMA?
Oh man, this is just it in a nutshell, man. I know it's hard to say just go for your dreams, but it's one where it's like you have a small little window. Anybody that has any aspirations in doing local events, there's no shame in that. There's no shame in doing local events to get the experience of what it is to compete, doing, all of your amateur stuff as much as you can till you actually figure out, I can do this, or, all right, I'm going to go back, I'm going to go, work for my dad's carpentry, company, or I'm going to go do this. But once you're in that small window, do everything you can to find out if you actually can do it, and give it everything.
Were you ever part of the Foxcatcher group?
Yeah.
How was your experience there?
Experience with, like, Dave Schultz was my coach for 3 years. My experience with him was awesome. Dave Schultz was my coach from 1992 till 1996, till January 96, when he was murdered. My experience with him was awesome. I had a good relationship with John DuPont. I had opportunities to stay in the 40,000 square foot mansion there, and train there. They had before our world teams in 1994. The DuPont Foxcatcher Farms was the site of our world training camp. So I mean, I was involved.
What was your reaction when that incident happened?
I cried like a baby. There wasn't one person. I was in Russia and competing in a tournament in a city called Krasnoyarsk, and our national team coach pulled us out at like 3 o'clock in the morning and said, hey, I got some really bad news. Dave Schultz has been murdered by John DuPont. And all of us, I remember just dropping to my knees. It felt like somebody had just like kicked me in the solar plex and knocked the wind out of me. It's horrible.
Did you see the Hollywood movie of that?
Yeah.
What did you
Yeah, I actually spoke with the director. He did like an interview with me for like an hour on the phone, years before the shooting of it. He was just doing his development. And I thought they did a good job. I thought Stephen Carell did an incredible job playing John. And Dave Schultz, Mark Ruffalo. I thought it was very well done.
Did you know Kurt Angle at all?
Yeah. I competed against Kerr.
Oh yeah, you beat him, didn't you?
Yeah.
I asked you last time. Yeah. But he was training at Foxcatcher for a while too. Were you guys there together?
Oh yeah. So it's even crazy. You never asked me that.
Yeah.
You asked me to compete. So my first international trip with USA Wrestling was the 1992 World Cups. In the fall of 1992, Kurt Angle was the #1 spot at 220, and him and I were wrestling, and he popped his knee. He didn't completely like shred his knee, and they brought me along on the trip just in case he couldn't make it for all the different matches. Kurt was the bomb, man. I thought I was going to be a weight class below him, but once I stopped cutting weight in college, I was like, holy crap, man, him and I have the same weight class.
Yeah, I'm actually interviewing him in April.
Oh, he's a good dude, man. Good dude. He's sober now,
Yeah. How did you end up finally sobering yourself up? It's so hard to clean yourself up. Especially when you're a celebrity.
It's difficult. You know what's really... it's difficult if you're a dad working at Subway. It's difficult if you're, it's difficult for any partner. For me personally, it was just, I had just had enough. And the options were becoming less and less and less and less. And what that meant for me is, the option to use or drink and stuff had whittled down to where it stopped working for what was going on with me emotionally. So the only other solution would have been putting a handgun in my mouth, and that wasn't a solution because I had a kid. And so, it's like I'm gonna do everything I can, and I'm willing to do whatever I can to get sober.
What was the lowest point for you?
Living out of the back of a car. Because I was too prideful to ask for help, and it had a case of the fuck-its, where I was, could have easily asked, say, hey, man, there's enough people that I knew that if I really wanted to help, and I was sincere about it, they would have said, hey, I got a room for you, or I got a place for you, or but I was too prideful, and I was too resentful, and, so that was probably the low spot.
How did you get involved in the whole Smashing Machine movie?
That was a college teammate of mine, John Greenheld. He ended up approaching me and just saying, "Hey, we're gonna put this thing together." And it ended up being, obviously nobody knew at the time they were shooting it that it was going to be, this epic, incredibly successful, documentary that was going to stand the test of time. So John knew it was special. I didn't.
Were you paid well for participating?
Usually with documentaries, and it held true for me too, is that the principal, which I was considered, doesn't get paid. And so the only money that I really got from it was when it was developed into a script and the movie rights and my life rights were sold off, which I didn't understand at the time what all that was. And that's what The Rock ended up buying back, was he went out and found out who owned all the different rights that were available for me, and his production company bought them all.
Okay. That movie's hard to find on the internet these days. Is that because
they scrubbed it? They scrubbed it. Yeah.
They don't want people knowing about it.
So when it came out, there wasn't like this fierce. There wasn't this fierce. Like as a movie maker, they want people to see your movies, right? And so they let people post it on the internet. They let people, do all these different things with it. And since then, it's been, because you can put, if you own it intellectually, you can have YouTube remove it, or you can have these different providers remove that content.
Right.
And that's what's started to happen.
Did you ever witness any backstage fights in MMA? Because they happen in wrestling here and there. But...
I witnessed some. So the most memorable backstage thing I remember is I was cornering Rico Rodriguez for his first or second fight in Japan, and we were in a ring in, God, man, I'm going to say it's Nagoya. Anyways, they were going to have pyrotechnics. They did have pyrotechnics, and in the center of the ring, they were going to have the big pyrotechnic. They explained to this Brazilian fighter, who was the first fight of the night, that he wasn't supposed to turn around and walk across to the ring to get back to the locker room. He was going to exit underneath and then stay there because he was the first fight of the night. He didn't understand all that. So it went from Japanese to Portuguese, right? And then from Portuguese to Japanese. And through that interpretation, it was lost. And so after they did his introduction, he turned around and he walked right over the pyrotechnics. It went up and gave him 3rd-degree burns. From the bottom of his feet all the way till his head. He was in a Tokyo hospital for, I think, 6 months before they could let him get on an airplane and go back to Japan, or let him go back to Brazil.
That's pretty bad.
Oh, it never smelt or never heard anything like that in my entire life.
What's your opinion of Wanderlei Silva, the axe murderer?
It's funny. He even scared me till I got to know him. Once you get to know him, he's a good guy. When you get to be around him, he still has this really standoffish, and it's deliberate and intentional what he does. To have you feel uncomfortable. It's part of his psychological battle that he's constantly waging when you're at a fight event. So I didn't have a problem with it.
As far as John Jones, supposedly he's going to move up to heavyweight.
I'd like to see it.
Fight the winner of Stipe versus Francis Ngannou. You'd like to see it?
Oh, I'd like to see it, yeah. I mean, part of it, and I think I said this in one interview before. I said the thing that sucks about being a John Jones fan is all the time that he wasn't allowed to fight. How many fights did we miss as fans, right?
Yeah.
How many matchups did we miss because he was tested positive for this, did that, did this? We probably could have had another 6, 8, 10 fights of him at light heavyweight. So, as a fighter, you need new motivation, and I get it for him that he's going to take it on. And he's talented enough, and he still has enough time in his window that if he's going to do it, he can do it. But Stipe's no joke. Stipe's no joke.
Do you think Stipe is going to get past Francis Ngannou?
I hope so, because Stipe was an Ohio guy, right? I hope so. Coleman's trained him before, and worked in his camp before. I hope he does, but it's a big ask, either way. But if he does, you talk about somebody with confidence. If he's able to get by that, man, he would look at John Jones like, dude, I'm going to put you back in the weight class you deserve to be in. That would be his attitude. And he's big enough where if Jones comes in and he's not ready, that's, you might be a quicker guy, but man, if he can get a hold of you, you're in trouble.
Are you surprised at how easily you beat Dan Bobish?
Yeah, I was, actually. Because most guys that are built like that, man, they're hard to move and hard to take off their spot. You know, just really, really difficult.
What are your thoughts on Ken Shamrock?
I like Ken. You know, so on Pluto TV, they had the reruns of Bellator fights here in the States, right? Yeah. And I'd never seen it until probably like 6-7 months ago. His fight against Chemo.
Yeah.
I like Ken. Like I said, never had any problems with him. Hung out with him, partied with him, you know, did all that stuff. But he just looked like, you know, like I would have been. You know, if somebody offered me $500,000 to get in there with Chemo and talk shit and all this other, sure.
Chemo's actually a really good guy. I interviewed him recently. I was surprised what his attitude's like.
Really?
He's very religious and very calm. Yeah. I
would have never figured that.
Yeah. He's a nice guy. Who hit the hardest, in your opinion?
Volchanchin did. Volchanchin just hit like a rock, man.
What were some of your best gym lifts in your prime?
I always had a big squat. Always had a huge squat. I mean, I was squatting, you know, I can get north of, you know, I can squat 700s and, you know, get reps with 700s. You know, 705, 725, 735. You know, I mean, shake like a bitch. You know, I used to watch Kevin Randleman take like 675 and rep it 4 times. You know, his ankles would hurt so bad after we would get on the squat rack. Oh God, man, he would literally have to sit with ice bags on him at the end of the night.
Thoughts on GSP, and do you think that he's going to come back and fight Khabib? They've been talking about it for so long.
God, man, I would like to see it. I've always been a big GSP fan. He's always carried himself incredibly well and just incredibly talented, man. I mean, just incredible. I mean, realistically, like, I don't hear up worship many fighters, but he's like one of the fighters I'm like, dude, you've been doing it right. You know, just been doing it right for a long time.
What do you think about Josh Barnett, another wrestler slash fighter?
Yeah, I like Josh. I like him. And he's actually, you know, again, one of those things where if he had a couple blips come up in his fighting career, he could have been on. He could have defended the heavyweight belt. You know, he could have got the heavyweight belt defended and kept the heavyweight belt for as long as he wanted. I mean, tenacious.
What about Conor McGregor? He just came off a bit of a surprising loss.
Just came off an ass whooping.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a surprising loss. He'd be the first one to tell you. It's like, surprising loss is, you know, slipped on the canvas and came up and the guy was throwing a head kick. That's a surprising loss. Or, you know, bounced on the ring and came over and you got caught with a hook, right?
Right.
That's a surprising loss. He just got his ass whooped.
Do you think he's going to fight Diaz next, or do you think it's going to be a Poirier rematch?
It has to be a Poirier rematch. It just does, because one, you could go, man, that much time off, ring rust, all this other stuff, wasn't prepared, all that. But Poirier's not the same fighter he was when they fought back in 13 or whenever they fought. And he's developed a methodology. So he, you know, obviously he looked at all the film of McGregor and he just dissected in his training camp, put together a beautiful game plan. This is what you need to do to beat him, and they beat him. So Conor McGregor needs to take that page out of that book and go, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to study, because he has the financial resources and everything to be able to do whatever he needs to do. So I hope he's not done.
What fight are you most proud of?
You know, still it goes back to the beginning. Probably the Fabio Gugel fight, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Hugo Duarte, and that was another one. You know, Incidentaway, that was another one. Incidentaway was after I got sober. You know, I didn't know what kind of fighter I was going to be, all this other stuff. So that was a big test for me as well.
Thoughts on Randy Couture?
Always liked him. Competed against him, always older. You know, Rain is just he's just a classic dude.
If you could change one thing about your fighting career, what would it be?
Gosh, man, it's hard to live with regrets, but I think the one thing would be to have more truth tellers around me. You know, like, you're full of shit, shut your mouth, it ain't reality, you know. All that, you know, just if I would have more genuine truth tellers around me, I think that, you know, at one point my career went this way, I think it could have went that way, and I could have, you know, competed for, you know, a bunch of different UFC belts.
What do you think about Tank Abbott? He lives in Arizona now too. He lives in Scottsdale.
Get out of here.
Yeah, he's a neighbor of yours. I'm going to see him on Monday.
God. Everyone from California is moving here.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, cost of living in California is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, tell Tank I said hi.
I will.
I've always liked him. Always liked him. You know, back then they needed characters more than they needed competitors. The UFC did, and he was a character. He'd be the first one to tell you he was a character.
And what about Dan Severin?
Always liked Dan. Always like. You know what's really crazy about that? Like Dan was like the first person put in space, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know really what it was. I mean, hell, they had Jim Brown and Jeff Blacknick as the commentators. You know, they had a guy show up with a bare fist and a boxing glove. That gives you an idea of, like, nobody knew what it was. Nobody knew. So for Dan to get involved with going, hey, I got this thing, it's not pro wrestling, like it's real, like you're really gonna fight. There's no weight classes, and there's really no time limit, and there's only like 2 rules. And for him to go, okay, I'm in. It's just crazy.
Any message you want to say to the fans here as we wind this down?
You know, just keep looking. I'm gonna do this again. Either I'm gonna come to you.
I'm gonna be back here. The weather's a lot nicer here than Canada.
So no, just keep looking, man. We got some good stuff coming up. You know, hopefully I'll get a little bit more active on my social media in the next, you know, couple months here, and just look for some good stuff to come out.
You think we'll see you on Joe Rogan anytime soon?
I'm hoping. We have WMA, which is William Morrison Agency, which is huge, and put the feelers out as we get a little bit farther along in the production of the Smashing Machine, that we'll be able to get on the show and have Joe just kind of do what Joe does.
Do you have any social media where people can follow you?
I'm getting better. Instagram, it's Mark Kerr TSM, the Smashing Machine, and then on Twitter, which I'm not really active on. Facebook, I'm active on Facebook, but Instagram is probably the easiest way to kind of pop in, pop out, and on Facebook.
Last thing, is there any fighters that were particularly helpful to you for your growth as a fighter?
You know, believe it or not, even though we were competitors, Mark Coleman, you know, Mark just had a genuine attitude that I didn't have. And he was like, hey, dude, this is, you know, basically you have to eat nails. You know, you have to suck it up. When he came here, he didn't stay in a fancy hotel. He stayed in a low-rent hotel. It wasn't because he didn't have money, because he needed to go, dude, I want to get dirty. You know, I want to get to the bottom of, like, who I am. You know, no comforts. You know, we're going to train like cavemen. So, you know, Mark's been a big influence, and Bas Rutten.
Oh, Bas, I didn't ask you about Bas. He's another great guy. I like him.
Oh, God, man. That's a whole... I could spend an hour talking about him.
Yeah. Maybe you could tell us one story about Bas.
Oh, God, man. Well, he doesn't drink like this anymore, but I think I'd said something to you before. It's like when he was cornering me over in Japan for my first fight.
Yeah.
He had drank, I think it was like 27 or 28 beers in coach, and I was up in business class, and they stopped serving him. And he came up into business class, and he just kind of sat on the edge of my seat on the armrest, and he was like, you need to order me a couple, talking like no slur, no nothing. Give me a couple beers. And I was like, like, okay, like not knowing him, like I'm not gonna ask the why.
Yeah.
And so like gave him a couple beers, he brings him back, and then finally the stewardess came up to me going, you can't give them to him. I was like, why? Because we cut him off. He's back there smoking. Like back then they used to still have 2 rows in international flights that were smoking rows. Like if you sat in these rows, you could smoke.
Yeah.
And so so the woman says, the stewardess says, you can't give them to him because we stopped serving him. And I was like, well, he's my coach. I need to keep him happy. And she's like, no, we're not serving you if you're going to give them to him. That was one. And then the other one, you had to be seated if you were smoking. And so boss is seated on the armchair again. And the stewardess is like, no, you can't smoke. You need to be seated. And then he goes, I am. Thank you. So those are my stories. Who's going to say anything, right?
I didn't know he had that side to him.
Oh, God, man. He had a very hardcore party side. You know, he's not like that anymore. I mean, he even
still smokes though.
Even like that, right?
Yeah.
He would be up in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, and give you everything he's got. Training you, everything he's got. He didn't skip a beat, man. He would hold the pads, hold the tie pads, hold the mat, hold the bags, whatever he needed to do, he was there. I mean, spot on, man. Never missed a beat. Incredible.
Wow. I didn't even realize he trained you. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, good dude, man. Solid.
I'll let you close this off by saying whatever you want.
Follow me on Instagram. I'm getting more active. And I just really appreciate Hannibal and everything that he's done, and him taking the time to sit here and talk with me, and for me to be able to answer some fans' questions. I appreciate it.
The special machine, Mark Kerr.
Hey, Rick, that's wow, that's an incredible introduction, man. I really that's amazing. You know what? Our relationship has grown into more of a friendship, you know, over the years. And I usually define a friendship as when, you know, I could pick the phone up, not having talked to this person in a significant amount of time, and you just seem to pick up where you left off from the last conversation. And you know, that's the beauty of connection, you know, having the ability to connect with another human being on a lot of different levels, you know, and you know, that's at one of those where, you know, it's easy to pick those up when you have that connection. And so, you know, I appreciate the introduction and all the accolades and everything that go with it. So
that, Mark. Well, in the immortal words of Jim Morrison, what a long, strange trip it's been.
Oh, man, it has been, you know, and part of it is that I don't, you know, I could pick up pen and paper and I couldn't write this story. I couldn't write it because no one would believe it. Like if I said this is a nonfiction story and I wrote it, people go like, yeah, right. You know, it's had some incredibly complex emotional times for me, you know, some incredibly unbelievable highs. It's had a lot of really hard learning lessons. You know, unavoidably, it's either all those things are going to destroy me or they were going to make me better.
So were there times in your life where you would categorically say it did the former? It destroyed you, and you thought it was over?
Yeah, you know, I would, you know, and this is just really interesting, the timing of this and what we're talking about. I just almost finished a book called Strength to Strength. And it talks about in life these high achievers, you know, like if you're a Silicon Valley, you know, whiz kid, you know, in your 20s, your brain has it's called fluid intelligence, right?
It has the ability to adapt and mold or look at all of this stuff that's been created and condense it and solidify it and make it your own. But as you get older, you have something called crystal intelligence. And your intelligence kind of crystallizes into this different level of intelligence. And those gaps between the two usually set you up for, when you're in fluid intelligence, have this really high achievement. And then as your intelligence goes into a different format of crystal intelligence. So, understanding that in my brain now, understanding that back then, my life was so wrapped up into one thing. I had the fluid intelligence to compete in mixed martial arts and wrestling and, all these different formats to be able to create that kind of life. And I didn't understand as I was evolving and changing into, my brain was changing into something different. I didn't know how to evolve and change. And so those things at the time felt like they were destroying me. A lot of them self-inflicted. A lot of things that I did, looking back on it, you hear the term a lot, like self-medicate, right?
Oh yeah.
Realistically, I was trying to find, your body is designed to find like homeostasis, right? It's trying to find its balance point. It's trying to find its equilibrium. And it's like, if you're so far off kilter one way or the other, you're going to try whatever you can to feel that sense of normal. So I think a lot of that, relationship wise, career wise, a lot of the things that were going on at the time, and it felt like it was like 10 deaths when all that stuff would hit you at once.
It was crazy freaking times. Mark, I remember our origin story, if you will, was in partnership at my pro wrestling school at a gym in Los Angeles called R1, the Raw Center, called at the time. Run by, in my mind, one of the absolute true pioneers and good guys of mixed martial arts, a guy named Rico Chiapparelli, NCAA champion himself, I believe, and hell of an instructor and hell of a business guy. You would never know about how he dressed and presented himself, but that was just Rico. I remember being approached by Rico one day, and he was such, in many ways, kind of like a low-key, chill guy. And I was managing Oleg Tatarov at that time. He was my first, name guy that I represented in mixed martial arts. Had a relationship with Rico, and he goes, Rick, I may have something for you, and as I remember it, at least, he said, but it might be one of those, like, be careful what you wish for situations here. He goes, I am, like, trying to manage these two guys. They're arguably the top two heavyweights in the world. He goes, I can't handle them, man. He goes, I mean, what was going on there? I mean, man. And other guy, of course, is Mark Coleman.
Yeah. You know what? It was Rico, and I believe his brother's name is Lou.
Yep.
Lou and Rico Chiapparelli. Yep. And, Rico was a little bit older than me, and he had wrestled at Iowa. What's crazy about it is they were trying to bring something into life that didn't exist. So it was
all before our time back in those days.
Oh my God, man! Nobody understood they couldn't understand even the basic. Like I've done interviews before where I said, like, you're explaining this to somebody and they go, hang on a second, you do what? Hang on. Yeah, like nobody had a real idea. So for somebody to come up with, like, hey man, we need to take these guys and present them to X, Y, and Z, or get them this, that. Because at the time also, nobody really knew what their value was. You didn't know.
West, man. Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't know if you're worth $500,000 a fight, $1 million a fight. Mm-hmm. You didn't know. You just kind of threw a number out there, and if that's what the promoter felt like, in Japan, you could get some ridiculous money back then.
I remember the deal we did with Pride, which was, I think, the first and we don't need to get into numbers and all that.
Yeah.
Private business. But it was a good contract. And it was a hell of a monthly number, paid monthly, if you remember that. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, that kind of deal felt pretty good back then. But it was like shooting in the dark, trying to figure out. Like when Coleman the next year went over and did that fight with
the fight.
Yeah, we were just making numbers up. It was pretty wild times.
Yeah, Rick, I don't think the general public gets an idea now, because there's enough media information out there now. People can watch your podcast and listen to it, and they can hear the behind the story, right? Like before this existed, this format, people just still didn't get it. I mean, they still didn't get how really, like, you were just making it up event by event by event. And what you're talking about, that monthly, for me, it changed my whole entire life. It changed my whole entire life. It gave me stability that I never had, allowed me to concentrate on one thing, on a day-to-day basis, to just go, what are you doing today? I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym again in the afternoon. I'm going to the gym again at night. I'm not trying to work a job in between going to the gym, work a job, come home, go to the gym. It allowed me flexibility and allowed me to just pick a spot going, I want to go there. I want to be the number one dude that does this. I want to go there, and allowed me to have the vehicle to do that.
You were, I think also, in all fairness, since we've already been very, very honest about everything, and I think we'll probably even go deeper and darker. I would dare say back at that time, guys that were built like you and I, obviously we're built very differently personality wise. I think if you had, or I had gotten money like you were being paid on a monthly basis, but got it 2 or 3 times a year for 1 or 2 or 3 fights, it'd probably been here today, gone tomorrow also. That's just how we lived our lives back then, I think.
Oh God, yeah, man. There was, you were spending it like you stole it. All of it, because it just, a lot of that was, there's a dichotomy there. There's the idea in an athlete's mind that you can compete forever, right? And then there's a scarcity concept of like, hey, I'm gonna live as hard as I can for as long as I can until it's over, and I always had this idea that I could control the ending, like a soft landing for my career. And then it just didn't happen.
I wanted to ask you about that because, you came in and you started with, I remember your fights, your tournament at UFC.
No, I did Frederico Lependa's event first.
Yeah, you fought in Brazil before that, of course.
Yep.
And that you got, and I'm sorry, and I knew that, of course, but I remember the first time I saw you on TV, before I knew you were in the 4-man tournament.
Yeah.
UFC. I think you fought, this is when it was still like style versus style. And it was like Hawaiian bone breaking versus. That actually was a style.
No, I don't doubt it.
It was great stuff. I think your first opponent was like Special Army Ranger.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was like champion of the bear pit, like 14, 18 time champion of the bear pit. And,
when you're standing across the octagon from that guy, are you like worried about these techniques that he might have that he might kill you with? Or are you like, this is ridiculous, I'm gonna smash this guy?
You know what was still crazy back then, Rick? You still, like me, I still had the idea or the concept that I grew up with about fighting, and that was the bigger dude always wins, or the 9th degree black belt guy in Kung Fu, he wins all the time. He's a 9th degree black belt. Look at his belt. He's got like 9 rings around it, right?
Yep.
So I still had somewhere buried in my head that idea that that shit was true. And so, somewhere in my subconscious that rang like, it's just this little voice, going, Oh, dude, he's king of the bear pit. And then all of a sudden, it's like all that shit's just wiped clean because now I'm out there doing my thing, right? I'm out there, and it's not I'm out there surviving. I'm out there as a predator, right? I'm out
Dude,
there.
you were far from a guy who looked like he was hanging on trying to survive. you flipping steamrolled everybody.
Yeah. Oh man, it was interesting because looking back on it, going, yeah, I mean it's predatorial response. It's like a survival instinct on, on a lot of stuff. Well, I was on a lot of stuff, but I mean, on a lot of stuff.
You ran up an awesome undefeated record for a big part of your long run in your career.
Yeah.
And so, Mark, what at that point in time, the viewing audience wasn't that educated. We still didn't know really what submission wrestling was. We did. We saw Rickson Gracie. When I say we, I'm talking about the general audience.
Yeah.
I knew more because I was in the business, but not that much more. And back then, I think there are guys we would look at. I think maybe Mark Coleman first, and then I think maybe Mark Kerr second. We're like, that guy's unbeatable. And we didn't really understand the concept back then. And we didn't know that eventually John Jones would be beat and everybody would be beat eventually. Did you at a certain point ever believe that you were unbeatable?
Man, that's an interesting question. So in the fighter's world, like our conversations, and I think I'm remembering this correctly. All of that undefeated shit came from Rickson. And Rickson put out there that he was like 400-0.
Yeah.
Right. And nobody back then even had any inkling of like, okay, well, are you counting the 2 fights you had in the sandbox when you're in elementary school?
Who was keeping
Are you counting the 3 you had in junior high school and then the 10 fights you had in high school? Are you counting all those? And that's kind of like now I can look at it and have some kind of humor towards it. I have no doubt that Rickson in his day doing submission grappling along with his brother, they're bad motherfuckers. There is no getting around that. The argument I can't say one disparaging thing against them. Royce proved it on a level that Rickson never did. And that's the reality of it. And it's not to say, I mean, Rickson, they're like, I've talked to Royce since the competition days, and he really is an amazing human being.
Yeah, very nice guy.
Unbelievable, just sincere, genuine. And he had said like he was never meant to fight. His father taught them to be teachers of the art so they can grow the sport. And it just turns out that Royce is the one that stepped up to answer the bell when that whole family's kind of integrity was challenged of like, your art ain't what you think it is. And Royce's dad's like, no, it is.
And Horion, the business mind of the brother, he told me once, and I think I've heard this in other places, that getting Royce out there, and it might sound like we may have somewhat different accounts, but I think it's interesting what I'd heard, which was, well, we're going to show that our art is the best in the world because we know it is.
Yeah.
We're going to do it against every style, every discipline. We're going to pick big, giant guys because the world did think back then the biggest guy was a guy that was going to win, and the toughest looking guy. And I heard that Royce was a strategic selection because he was the guy in the entire family that least looked the part. Where
I heard that part. That's actually really good.
It kind of makes sense if you think about it from a promotion or marketing standpoint, because like I remember, look, I'm going to sound like some bullshit story of Woodstock because everybody was at Woodstock, right? I, honest to God, was at UFC 1 at Mammoth in Denver. And This is 1993. Went with my buddy Jay Troy,
Wow.
and the building was half full. And I remember when Ken Shamrock came walking out for the first time. Nobody had ever heard of him yet. I mean, if you're in Japan and you're a hardcore fan,
You have. Yeah.
otherwise I didn't know who he was. But when he came walking out, I'm like, wow, that guy looks the part, right? Dude, when Royce came walking out, you're like, who's the skinny, balding dude in the gi, right? Now, Horion, Rickson would have made a different impression because that guy.
Rickson does look the part. He
looked like
he
the
does.
Brazilian version of Ken Shamrock. And,
Yes, he does. That's interesting because you know what? In all of that, like in Rio, or he looks like I'm on a surfboard every day out there. You know, it's just as different. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't even put all that together till you just told me.
Yeah, so you put Royce out there, and then he wins this whole thing. You're like, holy shit. This is the real deal, right? So, Mark, I never do this on the show, but now I have to ask, just because it's a fun question. If you fought Royce in your prime and his prime, what would have happened?
Oh, you know, and I think I said this. I don't know if I said it directly to you. So we were inked on paper to fight in Pride 2.
Oh no, I didn't know this. No.
Yeah. So Pride, which was KRS back then, they got a hold of me. They said, okay, we're going to pay a gazillion dollars, you know, to fight the best people in the world. The first person we want you to fight is Royce Gracie. So I go over to Japan and we do this press conference, all this stuff. And we were inked to fight, God, it would have been March of 1998.
Well, how do I never know this before? Okay.
Yeah. And you know what's even crazier? I was digging through an old hard drive that I had, and I think I found the contract.
Wow.
That would be interesting. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
I'd love to see
it. Absolutely. So, you know, this topic has come up a couple of times. God, man, you know what? As a competitor, I'd like to think that I would have won. That I was so imposing physically that I would have been able to impose my will on him. But watching him fight Sakuraba and watching just how tough of a competitor he is, you know, it would have been interesting because all it would take is one mistake from me, and that's it. It's game over.
Yeah, it's so hard to look back and say what would have happened. And I never thought about this question until we started talking. I don't think he would have been able to withstand the assault. You're right. If you gave him something, he would have taken it. No doubt.
Oh God, yeah, man. He's just so slick in being able to, like, if I've watched a ton of his stuff because there was always supposed to be this rematch. And back then it was like acquiring all of it, like VHS tape, you know, like getting a VHS tape. And God, man, it's just, you know, it's one of the people that actually, you know, as a competitor, I admired him just because of his grit, but more than his grit, he was just a technical genius, man. He could, you know, he'd work, 4 minutes in a round to set up one thing at the very end of the round.
Oh yeah.
And when you would go back and watch the film, you would go like, oh shit, he's baiting him. And he baits him again, and he baits him again, and then he pulls it and he baits it. It's just these little things that you go like, when you're in the heat of the moment, to be able to have that composure to do that, that's a different kind of competitor.
He's playing high level chess. That's
sure. God, man, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, that whole you know, he shattered the idea that you need to be 6'10" and 300 pounds, or you have to be, you know, X, Y, or Z, or look apart. You know, I mean, it's just really he did a lot, I think, for
the community of mixed martial arts to usher them into the 21st century.
The Gracies deserve all the credit for putting it, if not being the ultimate guys that put it on the map, making the largest contribution ever, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We'll never see that fight. It's fun to think about. But regardless, so you get through your steamrolling opponents. You're at the top of the game. You're ranked number 1 in the world. You win Abu Dhabi's 3 years in a row, I think.
Yeah.
The guy with no submission background, by the way. Let's not forget that. So, Mark, what happens, man? We got to get into this. So there's a very famous movie, people haven't heard of it. It's not famous to them, but I'm telling people it's famous. It's called The Smashing Machine. And it was a highly, highly regarded documentary that ran initially, I think, on HBO and was so well received. It ran like a zillion times after that. You can still watch it. And, it's a deep, dark, no holds barred look into the specimen's descent into hell. I think that's a fair I remember for my part in San Clemente when I lived, if you remember my wife, Gabrielle, we had an apartment at Seacrest Apartments. That was big, high wheeler dealer I was living in an apartment at the time. And I remember renting another apartment in that community, which from time to time you and Mark Coleman Howard would stay out together.
Yeah.
And if memory serves, and I could be wrong, and correct me if your recollection is different, to me that was kind of like the beginning of the content that would later become the Smashing Machine.
A lot of it was, I think at the time, looking back on it, I was starting to place, just this enormous amount of pressure on myself. And I think a lot of it, bringing up Rickson earlier was the idea, being undefeated, not having a loss, that was kind of the standard back then. And was so unrealistic. It's like the downward pressure on women to be these stick figures and, it's like the same kind of concept back then because Rickson said, I'm 400-0, and he just threw that out there and it's like, oh shit, I need to be undefeated. And it's like, it just doesn't happen. It's like, and as more money started to come into the sport, the likelihood of that happening was less and less because more money attracts more talent.
Yep.
And when you get more talent in there, you're gonna have one day where you're just not up to the challenge.
And that talent pool grew fast and emerged. But Mark, I got to think your first, I believe your first loss was to Fujita in Japan, and Fujita was a tough son of a bitch, man. Maybe kind of, and I just thought of this for the first time. Maybe in some ways, just like Rickson is a Brazilian version of Ken Shamrock or vice versa, maybe you and Fujita were almost like mirror versions of each other. He being like the Japanese.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Looking back on it, he was almost like, it's hard to call him a plant, like put in there as being the disruptor, but he was put in there to be the disruptor, and he, looking back on it, he actually had a really good wrestling career, at a very high level. So he, part of what my secret sauce back then was in starting mixed martial arts was that I had an Olympic level training mentality. And that's a world-class training mentality because of my wrestling background. When you come from a pure mixed martial arts background and it's not K1 and it's not a Muay Thai, right? You don't have the class of athletes that that train at that world-class level. And now you do all the way across the board. Back then, so if you go through, college wrestling and then go from that to senior freestyle Olympic style wrestling, it gives you a level because you're exposed to other competitors around the world that train at very high levels.
Yes.
So you understand what it is to compete at that high level. Back then, you had these pockets of athletes that understood it. This is a good example. Frank Shamrock, right? Frank Shamrock comes from that, but he was a mad scientist when it came to training.
Yeah, he was.
Oh my God, when it came to these little, like he was doing heart rate training back then. He was doing heart rate recovery. He's doing time recovery. He's doing these circuits. And, 25 years ago, there's nobody on the planet doing that.
Nobody was doing that. Mark, the first guy I brought into MMA that I managed for a fight and cornered for was Randy Couture's first opponent ever. Big, giant pro wrestler who dubiously was also the heavyweight champion of Finland in boxing, which probably wasn't worth a whole lot. And this guy's a 6'5", 300-pound, jacked up, scarred, tattooed, flipping monster. Randy was terrified. He'll admit to that. And this guy trained like 30 minutes in total for the entire fight. And it was just, and Randy ate his lunch in no time at all. It's like,
oh my God.
You see that these days. It doesn't work that way anymore.
No. Oh my God. It doesn't work that way. So back then it was, first loss to Fujita, he understood what it was like to compete at that high level. So in that bout, there were so many other things going on at that time. There was, there's never an excuse for losing. I would step up and say I lost, man. It's hard as a person to go, he kicked my ass.
Well, my big question for that fight is, did he win that fight or did you lose that fight?
I lost that fight.
That's what I thought.
I would say this, Rick, and I'm sorry to cut you off there, but a lot of that is, as far as just if you go athlete to athlete, right? I'm a better athlete, right? I had more MMA experience. I had more ring experience. The one thing that sometimes is unaccountable is determination and grit.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Going, God, man, he's not very talented, but fuck, he's got grit.
Yep.
And sometimes that gets you through. And there's a whole litany of other factors, but that's a fight that I look back and I go, well, Mark and I should have had our day. That would have been fucking phenomenal.
You and Coleman.
But yeah. And it just, it just didn't happen. It wasn't supposed to happen like that.
I remember the first fight that I cornered, first time I ever cornered for you, and first fight when I was your manager, was Hugo Duarte at and he's a respectable guy for sure.
Yeah.
And you won that fight, but you didn't do what you did to the pit fighting Army Ranger guy. It's like it just, to me, it wasn't you out there anymore, if that makes sense. And I'm kind of like wondering if you would agree with that, and if so, like, what was happening?
So this probably, you never heard this part of it. So to that point, I had like 3 or 4 fights in a row where I don't even think it went a minute, right? And back then it was these bulletin boards. They didn't have really bloggers, but you can get on these MMA bulletin boards, and I started reading this shit where it's like, oh, fuck Kerr, he's so juiced up, he can't go more than a minute. That's why he's, trying to knock everyone out in the first 30 seconds, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, because everybody wants to fight longer than they need to, right? Of course.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I end up getting in this conversation after the fight. And if you remember, Boss was also in the corner, and he was pissed. He was frustrated.
He was going nuts in the corner. I remember well. Yeah.
And part of that was just, he was like, just end it. And I think, Rick, part of that sickness is listening to the clippings or the bulletin board material and going out there and going, I'm going to beat you until you fucking quit. Instead of choking you out, instead of, doing X, Y, and Z, I'm just going to keep beating on you. And I don't care if it takes 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I'm just, and I think part of that was like, once I got past like the 10-minute part, and then it was like 15 minutes, because I think the bout went like 18 minutes or something like that.
Long, yeah.
And it was so fucking long, and Boss was just like you could have jumped on his back and choked him out. You could have done this, and this, and it just, he was frustrated. Really frustrated.
I remember a few times Boss was frustrated back in those days.
Yeah.
Jiu-Jitsu days. I mean, you were always a guy that I talked about during the intro. Intelligent, charming, and I forgot to mention, truly one of the most genuinely nice guys. but dude, you weren't the easiest guy. Not that I was either. But you weren't the easiest guy to connect with.
No, you know what, Rick, man, part of looking back, a lot of it, I think a lot of times it's being difficult just to be difficult, and I didn't have the experience in that realm of either managing or all the other aspects that come with it. So, I didn't really know what like norms or standards were, right? And I was trying to create something, I tell people, I go, well, my first time ever showing up to Japan for a press conference, everybody's in sweats and I'm in a fucking Hugo Boss suit.
Yep.
Because I wanted to bring something a little different to the table.
Smart move, man. Yep.
Right. And not really understanding like there's a whole philosophy behind that, right?
All right, Mark, we've looks like Mark is still with us, but we've lost his image and his voice for a moment. Hopefully he will be back with us in a moment. We're in the midst of a conversation here on Talking Tough with Mark Kerr, and I know he'll be back. This has been great so far. I'm looking down, so I'm texting him, folks, to make sure we're getting him back. And we'll get a little deeper into all the craziness before we wrap up here. Now I'm done talking. We'll have a hard edit at this point. Looks like you're back.
I'm sorry about that, Rick.
No, that's all right. That's all right. That's why we have editing software, guys. And as promised or as hoped, we're back. All right.
Yeah, right.
Here we are. Hey, Mark, good to see you again. Okay.
Yeah, good to be here.
So, man, I want to just like with you know, I want to tell you a quick story, and it's going to be one of millions in your life. If you're anything at all like me, you've forgotten a lot of them. So one night we went to a party. We were at a nightclub on PCH in Laguna Beach. It was you and I and Mark Coleman and Tom Howard. And then we heard there was an after hours party in the Laguna Beach Hills with some mansion. Do you remember that?
Oh my God. It was, I think the guy that owned the bars again, named like Rizza or something like that.
Yep, Rizza. Yep, that's right. So we go to this mansion, and I remember like the ecstasy X-Tabs came out. I'd never done that.
Yeah.
Never done one. You guys are in the midst of training for fights. Tom is being Tom, of course, Tom Howard, one of my dearest friends, and like Bas Rutten at that time, and Roddy Piper, God rest Roddy's soul. They were all the kings of excess. None of them are anymore, which is great. And the X-Tabs come out, and I do one, and it's like an hour later, I'm like, I don't feel anything. And I forget who it was. I think it was probably Tom being Tom. It was Tom. It's like, probably him. He's like, just do another one then. Okay. And I remember like being carried out of the party eventually by the two top athletes in the planet, which was great, because I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't walk. It was like a typical night back then, man. And it's like,
it really was.
It's like, but what happens in your mind when you're the top heavyweight in the world, and then you start to live your life that way? Is there a reason for it? Do you think back on that at all now and go, why did I do that? What was I thinking? I needed to do that to be where I am now. I mean, how did that all go?
Oh man. You know, I've obviously examined a lot of parts of my life, and those kinds of instances, you know, I really felt this sense of just absolutely two things, entitlement, and then just a sense of immortality, where, you know, I just felt like this is who I'm going to be forever. I'm going to do whatever I want to do because I am, you know, I am immortal. You know, and it's nothing that you form the ideas in your head, and your behavior translates that. You know, it's like you don't verbally go, hey, man, I'm immortal and, you know, I'm entitled to this. But in your head, it's this like conversion of like that's going on in your head, and you translate it into really fucked up behavior.
It becomes deeply rooted, I'm sure.
Oh my God, man. It's still, entitlement still fucks with me to this day. Because
I don't get that from you anymore, but go ahead, please.
It still does. And it comes up. I'm more cognitively aware of it right now, in how I operate. And sometimes it's an attitude. Sometimes it's you know, in, you know, this self-centeredness, you know, which is just, you know, again, that's part of my disease, right? You know, part of my, you know, addiction, you know, but it's a lot easier to recognize, you know, when back then, when I'm totally entrenched in it, no way. I mean, I am riding this thing until it crashes. And usually it crashes pretty spectacularly.
Well, you know, and in your case, it was all chronicled on film and for the world to see. Not many people see that. So when the Smashing Machine, and I'll just repeat it again for anybody who missed it, I think one way, there's a lot of ways to summarize it. It's a great piece of filmmaking. It's a great documentary. One way to summarize is the number one fighter in the world, Mark Kerr's descent into hell. I think that's a fair way to look at it.
Wow.
Did you know that's what it was when it was being made?
Well, this gives you another layer to what I just said. when you're in entitlement in the sense of immortality, what it creates is this self-delusion, right? And so delusionally, I thought my world was completely different. So when I got approached by John Greenhalgh he's like, hey, can you get us passes to this event? We're going to come out. We're going to film a little bit. I want to do, you know,
John
I was,
John Greenhouse. I'm sorry, that's the producer.
yes, John Greenhalgh. Yeah, he's the producer, and John and I went to Syracuse University together. We went to film school there.
So you got history.
And so he's a little bit younger than me. I was a little bit older than him. But nonetheless, I mean, you know, college wrestling team is just a small group of guys, right? So, I mean, we all knew each other. And so when John approached me, I had already a level of trust with him.
Sure.
You know, but that delusion was running so deep that I thought my life was completely different. I was like, sure, come on in, man. This should be great.
Wow.
And, you know,
you thought it'd be something that would make you look even cooler than you already were looking.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, wow. Right. So
absolutely.
It really, I mean, it was cool in some weird ways, but I'm not sure that's how most, I'm sure that's not how your mother would have looked at it.
Oh, no, not even close.
So this comes out and you see the edit. And what are your thoughts when you first see it? And of equal importance, what do your family say to you?
Oh my God, man. You know what? The one thing,
brutal show, man. It really is.
Oh my God, man. You know, Rick, the part about it, you know, which I didn't completely understand, and most people don't. You know, when you're either in a drug or alcohol addiction or sex or gambling or whatever it is, right? You know, another delusion that I had was that I'm doing it to myself. How the fuck does it affect you? Right. And that's, again, this entitlement, this delusion of self that if I put something in my body, why does it hurt you?
Yeah.
You know, and it's so this, you know, so what I didn't understand until my family saw this is how many nights they were up because my girlfriend at the time, Dawn in the film, had called them to say he's on another bender. He's on a run. You know, I don't know. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. You know, I have no control over him. You know, she called my brother Michael, you know, who I respect tremendously and has been there through thick and thin my whole entire career.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I didn't understand that. I would get a call from him going, hey, what's going on? You know, just as a check-in, because he didn't know how to handle it either. And he didn't want to scare me further down the road by going, you motherfucker, man, you better stop or I'm coming out there and fucking da-da-da-da. So he didn't know how to handle it. And obviously that in and of itself reinforced the delusion of what the fuck, you know. So there was a lot of deep stuff going on back then. And part of that, you know, when all this stuff started coming out and really, really trying to get down to like what is going on, you know, it's a tough ask, especially at, you know, where it was in my career, you know, what was going on, in the amount of tension. You know, I look at it like this too. When the film came out back then, HBO, they were gods. Like if it came out on HBO, man, it was like the gold standard.
A very big deal. Yes.
Oh my God, man. It's not like you're in the corner porno shop, you know, fucking in the seedy side of town. This is on 44th Avenues of America, HBO building, you know, top floors, 2 huge freaking cinemas up there. I mean, it is as big time gets. So when this comes out, there's no social media, there's no Instagram, there's no Facebook, there's no, you know, there's none of this is it. So this is the first transition that people could actually from this little pocket MMA world to mainstream media, HBO, they look at it in, for a lot of people, they look at it and go, oh my God, I can't watch. But for some people that watched that first 10, 15 minutes, they couldn't take their eyes off of it.
Sure. Well, it's like you can't look away from a train wreck sometimes.
Yeah, it's
Quite a bit. I'm sorry. It's fascinating. It absolutely is fascinating.
No, it was a full on train wreck, Rick, man. It had bodies flying out everywhere. I mean, and
you said something I never thought of before, which was that was probably the first major mainstream media exposure for mixed martial arts. I never thought about that before. Did you take any heat from like Pride, from UFC?
UFC I did. Oh my God, man. So if you want to look at overlap, Bob Meyerowitz was having a complete fire sale when he knew it literally, he had pissed every boxing commission off in the United States.
Yep.
It had narrowed it down to where he was legally allowed to do it in a couple places, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And so John Greenhalgh and John Hines, they approached the UFC, and the UFC is like, all right, you want to buy footage? Sure. How much footage you want to buy? And so they sold them all this footage at fire sale prices. And that's how we were able to get the footage from the UFC. Pride, so this is what's crazy about Pride, and John Greenhalgh reminded me of this, that when they went over and filmed the Volchanchin fight where he illegally kneed me in the head,
yep,
and it was a DQ,
mm-hmm,
it was a no contest. They never got Pride to sign releases. So all of that footage they captured, they couldn't use. So as this started progressing down the road, and they realized, oh my God, man, we don't have a film if we don't have that footage, obviously. They ended up coming to me, and I said, you know what's interesting? I have a contract renewal coming up, and I'm going to tell Pride I won't sign it unless they sign the releases.
Sure.
And I had totally forgot about it. And literally I presented it to them. They hemmed and hawed and were like, because they didn't know what kind of film was going to be made. Right. And I'm going to circle this back to the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
So Pride signs off on it, and the film gets made. HBO buys it. At the same time, the Fujita brothers bought the UFC from Bob Meyerowitz.
Oh boy. All right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Dana White gets an idea. He hears about this film, and he calls, or has the Fujita brothers, whoever, call HBO and say, hey, we realize that this film's being made. It has footage, all the documents, everything was signed. We legally had the footage. They couldn't protest. They couldn't take it to court. They couldn't put a cease and desist. They couldn't do any of that. Plus, you wouldn't want to do that to HBO. It just would be the wrong way to start a company. So they said, hey, can we get a copy of it to see how this is going to air?
Oh boy. Right.
And you know what HBO said? It comes out on January 22nd. You can watch it just like everybody else when it comes out.
Nice. Yeah, that's true.
And to say that to Dana White, or to say that to the Fujita brothers, who probably at the time weren't really used to hearing a bunch of no's, I would probably venture to guess. So that set a very, very fucked up tone. And then with the UFC, they asked me to fight Pete Williams. And I said, no, I'm under contract with Japanese. And that's the last time they entertained, offered, looked at, talked to me, anything. That was
Do you have a relationship with Dana at all these days?
No. No.
I mean, it's no reason to, unless he puts you in the Hall of Fame, of course, which will happen at one point.
Yeah, it's just, you know what? It's one of those conversations that you have where the UFC Hall of Fame is really the MMA Hall of Fame, right? Because it's the whole entity, right? It's like trying to understand, like, can the story of MMA be told without this person? That's usually the criteria.
And it'll follow the WWE Hall of Fame by the same token, because for up until 10 years ago, if you weren't a WWF superstar, you weren't going to get into that Hall of Fame. And now they're realizing they have to put people into it that never even worked for the company, because it has become the de facto Hall of Fame for the entire industry.
Yeah.
UFC is absolutely going that direction, if they're not there already. So you'll have to be in.
Well, it's just one where, like for me being where I was in mixed martial arts and in the UFC and Pride, and to go over and do Abu Dhabi was such a big risk at the time, because it could either invalidate me or, he's a big steroided up dude, man. That's why he's winning these things, right? Or it could absolutely validate me. And that was a continuation of, like, the evolution of understanding that mixed martial arts is really complex, man. It involves so much detail from so many different disciplines. And that's kind of what I was trying to demonstrate at the time, going, I have a wrestling background. The first thing I knew is that I didn't know how to freaking fight. I didn't know how to fight. I know how to compete, at a very high level. I didn't know how to fight.
You know how to control the body.
Yep. And so that was part of the Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu and Bas Rutten and Oleg and Marco Huaz and Pedro Hizo and, that whole group of guys.
Yeah, what a crew. Wow.
Oh, my God. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine? Like, Marco at the time didn't speak any English. And I was just joking with Boss about this. I go, so we would go there, and Marco would want to wrestle, and I'd wrestle with him all day long.
He had a big smile. He had a big kid-like smile all the time. Also.
He did, man. Such a good person, man. Such a genuinely good person. And so I would say to him in English when we would spar, I would go, Marco, no headshots, because we didn't wear headgear or mouthpieces. We were fucking knuckleheads, right?
How about don't kick me in the leg also?
That was the other one, but he would go no. He would go shin. I wouldn't spar him without shin pads, because a couple times I go, okay, all right. His timing where he would just kick me off my feet, right? He would just kick me off my feet, like, because a lot of like with Boss and with Marco, if you were lazy with anything, they would, like, if you threw a lazy jab against Boss would he'd hit you 10 times. Yep. Like, everything that you did with him had to be, deliberate, willful, intentional, right? You can't just go like, I'm going to just, because it just would hurt. So with Marco, I'd go, Marco, no headshots. And he'd go, okay. I'd swear, man, like 1 minute into the round, pap, pap. And then he would try to explain to me in Portuguese that, hey, it's a reaction. I'm not doing it on purpose, but I didn't understand this till much later. And I go, why didn't you just fucking translate that to, like, dude, we need to do something different, because I'm tired of getting punched in the fucking head.
Yeah, those were the days, man. Well, Mark, let's man, I've kept you for a while, but a couple more things I wanted to get into before we let you go here.
Yeah.
Staying in the abyss for one more moment only till we really come out of it. So at the end of Smashing Machine sees you in a pretty dark place. What, people out there, they want to know this, because, fans of mixed martial arts, pro wrestling even, that are watching this, they know Mark the Specimen Kerr is, the one-time top heavyweight in the world, a legend, an icon. They've heard some recent amazing news. Maybe they've forgotten that you've experienced just as bad as they have, maybe even worse. And people find that relatable, man. In my experience, the I don't want to say average, nobody's average, but the citizen, the regular man, it helps them to know their heroes have been through it too. I think people take solace in that and inspiration and coming back out the other side. Is there there's probably several rock bottoms, I'm sure, but
Oh man.
how would you characterize and describe like the worst of the worst? Where were you and what did that look like?
Oh man. You know, when I have a bad day, like now, right? The thing that pulls me back into, you know, like it's not that bad. And this is hard to admit, and I've only talked about it a couple of times, you know, but you know, back in I think 2006, 2007, I just got divorce is finished. My son at the time was probably like 2 or 3, and I couldn't stay sober. I just couldn't get it together, and you know, I end up literally living out of the back of my fucking car. You know, like literally living out of the back of my car. You know, and you know, that is like my best thinking at the time. You know, that's where it landed me, you know. And there had to, you know, for me, the level of humility to get to where I am now, the amount of work that I've had to do, you know, it really is, it's humbling because it requires a level of honesty about what my defects are, what my attributes are, you know, what I can contribute, the lessons I could, you know, help somebody with. You know, it's a lot, Rick, man. But I just remember, you know, literally, you know, in the back of my car and just not having a freaking clue what I was gonna do.
So it was the opposite of, hey, I'm in my car. This is so cool. I don't have to
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't a, hey, oh my God, I'm free. You know, hey, you know, it wasn't a minimalist lifestyle. No, by
You
any
probably didn't have a lot of close contact with your son, I would imagine, at that point.
No. And then really what kind of pulled all this back together was, you know, I ended up going up to Colorado for a little bit, training up there to try to get ready for an event. And I wasn't in a space to be able to train, you know, and I came back down, and I'll never forget this. I mean, my son, like I said, was 2 or 3 at the time. And my ex-wife opens the front door, and my son cowers behind her.
Oh,
because he doesn't recognize me.
Oh, right.
You know, it had been like 7 months, 8 months since I'd seen him, and he doesn't recognize me. And it was this feeling, I can pull it up right now, and it gets me emotional, you know, because it's one of those feelings where at that moment I'm never going to put him in that spot again. And I'm never going to have this feeling again. Like I've just absolutely just fucking let this kid down, you know. And there's been a lot of moments in between here and there. And you know, my son is 19 now, you know, and, you know, he's turned out to be just an amazing kid.
Yeah, I'm sure life looks a whole lot different. I know life is different for you these days. I know that by talking to you last week and today. And I want to, toward the end of this, really get into what your life looks like today, because I know it's like the proverbial happy ending that gives people hope. But I want to ask you before we get there, and it's this. So many years ago, your old colleague and friend John Greenhouse calls you, a guy maybe that can get a movie made, and says, hey, I want to try to make a movie with you. And it happens, and it comes out, and it is what it is, and you know what that movie is now. I think I'm actually going to go watch that again tonight, Mark. I haven't seen that.
Oh, man.
I want to watch. I haven't seen it in 20 years, probably. I really feel like I want to watch it again. So you get it made, and you have the reaction you have, your parents have the reaction they have.
Yeah.
You got a movie made. And years later, many years later, some other guy calls you that maybe has the ability to get a movie made also, and says, I want to make a movie with you, about you. Can you tell us what that's about and what's happening with that now?
Yeah. So, God, man. So I get a call from a guy named Brad Slater, and Brad Slater works for William Morris Agency.
Yeah.
Brad Slater
in the world.
Oh, he's huge. I mean, so I get a call from him and he says, hey, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, wants to do a biopic movie about your life based on the documentary.
Well, hold on. Did you think you were being pranked when you first got
100%, man. 100%, Rick. This is like one of these where it's like, I swear, man, it's like, where's the camera? Like, I know there's got to be a camera in there somewhere, just like not. And I even looked him up and I punched the number in the computer. I'm like, oh shit, the number does go to William Morrison Agency. Well, fuck.
And for context, for those out there who don't know, because I've been in that industry forever, William Moore, WME, owns UFC and WWE.
And
is the number one agency in the world, and Brad Slater is at the top of the heap, what they call a packaging agent, which are the guys that put entire projects together under the William Morris banner. So yeah, it doesn't get higher on the food chain than WME or Brad there. So
no, I mean it's like calling the president, right?
Yeah.
It's like it was like one of those feelings where when it started, it was like, okay, and then from there, the progression of it, everything needed to happen the way it happened. So when this started back like 4 years ago, I didn't even get excited about it, Rick. I just kind of tried to stay between here and here, right? I just said kind of like, my life needs to go on regardless.
Good.
If this happens or doesn't happen, and I still have that kind of sense of feeling.
Good.
But the difference is now everything's in place.
Now it's green lit. It's happening.
Oh my God, man! It's so everything's in place. Back then, he had an idea. So D had an idea, and he didn't have all the pieces worked out, and so now everything just kind of fell into place. It's like, A24 Studios, Benny Safey's directing it. Benny Safey's writing it with DJ. And, $7 is going to produce it. A24 is a studio that's, it's turned into where it's like, oh shit, this is going to happen.
Well, Mark, and for those out there listening that don't know, who's playing Mark Kerr in the movie?
Dwayne Johnson, The Rock.
That's insane, man.
Yeah.
So,
you ever sit around? This is what's funny. So this is a running joke for a while, Rick. Hey! Oh, they're gonna make a movie about your life. Who's playing you? Like the game of like, well, if they're gonna make a movie about your life, Rick, who would play you?
Well, Brad Pitt, obviously.
Of course,
Or Channing Tatum. I don't know one of the two.
And exactly like if I was like had all the options on the board, I'd go, oh, I'd probably want The Rock to play me, I guess. I'm just saying, looks, build wise, it's just like
coolness. Sadly, Mark, I ended up with Paul Giamatti, but
it's better than Danny DeVito or something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But anyways, it's just one of those, one of those, amazing things, and a lot of stuff that's gone on in my life. A friend had said it to me, and he said it matter of factly. He said, you know what? This is what you need to do. You need to go in your bathroom, look yourself in the mirror, tell yourself you love yourself, Tell yourself you're worth it. Tell yourself you deserve it. And tell yourself that you are just this. That's the character of who you are underneath all the fucking bullshit, underneath all the bad behavior, underneath all of that stuff. The reason why this moves forward is because of who you are as a person. And as this amazing context, when he put it in that context, I'm like, wow, it makes sense. It makes sense that this is kind of how things have progressed and where I am now. And, when I talk to DJ, he's just such a gracious guy. And, he's just genuinely such a good person. He's like, hey, Mark, I want you to know this is an honor for me. I don't think this is like a really big honor for me. It allows him to move in a direction that he's never moved in before. And I told him, I said, DJ, I think, at this point, I would venture to say that you were made and born for this role. Because he identifies with it in a way that he thinks he can bring it to life.
I can see that, certainly.
In a way that when you talk to him about it, you can feel the excitement.
Well, he's a real guy, for a guy who became the top guy in the history of a make-believe world. Well, he became that because he's real. So I could absolutely see that and see. I don't know him well. I actually, when he came back after many years off to wrestle Hulk Hogan in the main event at WrestleMania, I got a call from the head of WWE Talent Relations going, hey, The Rock's coming back. He's got ring rust. Can you bring him into your gym and kind of like work some of the rust off him? And I'm like, sure, of course. Yeah. So he comes. It was supposed to be like a week-long deal. I brought all my top instructors in. Tom Howard was there that day, other guys that He came in. He looked like $1 million in the first 10 seconds. And all I could, we had one session, and all I could say is like, hey, kid, I think you got the but no, you got how real and how genuine he was. And it's awesome that you have that relationship with him now and that you're in this place where the #1 movie star in the freaking world is genuinely excited and humbled by playing you. That's but what I really like about this, Mark, the whole like fan worship part of it aside, is I can see like how humbled you are by it. And I love what you said a couple minutes ago when you're talking about you look yourself in the mirror and say, I love you. And and dude, that's great advice. There's going to be very few of us that are going to ever have Dwayne Johnson play them in a movie. But what you said applies to everybody in every situation every day. Yeah. And that, aside from the part that I'm worshiping the fact that Dwayne Johnson is playing you in a movie, that's my favorite part of what we talked about tonight. And dude, it's just so cool that you're in that spot. It's just
Rick, man, it's and I say this with a lot of humility because it took a lot of tries, right? And understanding that it took exactly how many tries it needed to be in order for me to get here, right? Not one more, one less, exactly the number that I was supposed to. And it's created, nobody can stay in a sense of gratitude 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But it's easy for me to just stop for a minute, even before this, to have just a sense of gratitude that I don't have to live in my own chaos, that I can actually, bring peace and joy around the people that are around me, and understand that my life now is about connection. It's about connecting. It's about, putting myself out there in an honest and genuine way so I can connect. That human connection is really what I've been after my whole entire life.
And you have that now. You have that other little Dwayne Johnson movie thing aside. Your life now that characterizes your life. You have that with your son, with your brother, I would imagine.
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah. And it does. It's it's that thing that, for me personally, that, like having this, when I was younger, I had this fear. I was afraid to connect on certain levels. So I'd only give you the appearance or what I thought you wanted, or, all these other things. And now I have the sense of comfort in myself that, my, like Jay Glazer's a good friend of mine, and Jay would, he says it all the time. He goes, dude, your vulnerability is your strength, period. Like if you're going to go, you're a superhero, right? You're a superhero. What's your power? Vulnerability. It's like counterintuitive, but it's really what allows that connection to happen, and allows me to be at peace with myself.
Mark, that's amazing. And I'm listening to everything you're saying, and it's just resonating so strong. I don't know if you can see this obnoxious background I have up on the podcast here, but this bottom, do you see the bottom in the red? The world's toughest men and women at their most vulnerable. And that's what makes people real, man. And it's like, I've kept you so long, and I don't want to keep you. I mean, I'd love to keep the conversation going, but
I got it.
To your time, it's like normally I would do, say, hey, Mark, thank you. Then you'd go away, and I would do a big wrap up. But I don't think there's anything to say beyond this, man. And if I did, it's going to weaken what I think is great.
So here's for your listeners. This is what I'll give. I'll give you this promise, and I'll give them this promise.
Yeah. Why don't you take us home, please?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to take you home. Okay. So as this movie progresses, we're going to have an update. And so this is what I'd really, really, really like to do. I'd like to, when I'm on set, come back on the show, because I'm going to be an executive producer. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm going to be there, and I would love to be able to do like a pod. I'd like to be able to get back on the show and kind of walk, your listeners through another chapter of this.
Yeah, that would be great.
Oh my God, man, it would be fantastic, man. It would be like really cool, and I think part of it, Rick, and I'm just going to end here. Part of it is just, again, the connection that you and I have, and really, like, I could do a podcast and interview you, because there's so many different levels to, really admiring what you've done through the years, and the consistency you've been as a person. So I really do admire that and respect that. And I'd love to be able to take your listeners on set with me, man.
Oh, that's good. Thank you so much, Mark, man. I love you, man. It was so great.
I love you too, buddy.